Time for another edition of the online dinner party. Looking forward to another great conversation and learning about a lot of great individuals and all of that. I just actually just came back from being out and about here in Durham, North Carolina. So it's a little bit on the rainy side here. And actually, the place that I went to, which is one of our cultural arts center, thought I was going to have to go over there and help with some of the things going on with one of our maintenance crews, but they actually did not manage to make it in. So I'll have to reschedule that for tomorrow. But I know a lot of folks are paying attention to a lot of various things going on in society. Of course, we're still in the middle of this pandemic, and more people are getting vaccinations. So a lot of people are paying attention to that. They're also paying attention to things going on around the world, things such as, of course, the NCAA basketball, if you're into sports and all of that. And of course, folks are also paying attention to the trial over there in the Midwest that has to deal with the George Floyd case. So a lot of folks are paying attention to that as well. And of course, folks are just paying attention to a number of other things that are happening in our political landscape, both here in Durham as well as on the national level and on the international level also. But we always have fascinating guests here on the online dinner party, and we love to talk to them about a variety of things that they've got going on in their lives and things that they are glad to be involved in, and definitely things that they are working on in their own lives and all of that. And today we've got Victoria as our guest. She is a amazing entrepreneur that has done some great things in her life and is definitely continuing to do great things. And I had the pleasure of meeting her with Potted. Definitely a great source for those of you that are doing podcasting, whether that's the streaming podcast or the more traditional audio podcast. And I have definitely met some truly amazing individuals through that platform, and they have come on to be guests on a variety of my shows. So looking forward to a great conversation with Miss Victoria and learning more about how she came from being a immigrant to being a very successful business owner. And of course, we might just talk about other issues that are going on as well. So I'm looking forward to a great and amazing conversation, and I'm going to bring Victoria in right now so we can have this conversation and see what she's got going on and a little bit more about her. So how are you doing, Victoria? Glad that you were able to join us here and everything. Definitely the international broadcast media is always glad to have truly great guests and all of that. And definitely when I saw what you were all about, having been an immigrant, and I'm not even sure from which country and everything, but then now coming here and being a successful entrepreneur. And I'd love to hear about your journey, and I'm sure that our audience would love to hear about it as well. So if you just share a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into a whole conversation about some of the amazing things that you're doing. Because like I said, you've gone from one side of society, and now you're just like this truly amazing and wonderful entrepreneur. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about what you've got going on in your life. Waiting to hear from Victoria. So I don't know if she's not hearing me, but
So glad.
definitely I'm talking to her. Let's see if I go that way.
Yes. I couldn't, you were going in and out, but first
Somehow
of
we're
all,
having some
opportunity for
audio
me to
technical difficulties.
share
That always happens
my
sometimes on
experience and
these shows. So
interest.
I'm not hearing Victoria, but I know she's
Okay, hold
saying
on.
stuff. So I'm going to see
Yeah.
what's going on here and everything, because definitely I was hearing her when we were going on earlier, but
Okay, hold
now
on.
I'm not hearing her at all. So let's see if I can hear her now. Victoria,
Can you hear me now? No?
let's see.
Hold on 1 second here. Let me check the audio one more time.
No, I hear you now. It was on my side.
No?
Victoria was on my
Okay.
side. I'm hearing you
It's on
now.
your side. Okay.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's such an honor to be sharing this incredible time with you. And I just sort of heard bits and pieces of your intro because we had some audio difficulty. First thing, I'm a UCLA Bruin. I bet you didn't know that.
I
So
did
when we're
not know
talking
that.
about basketball, yeah, that's so such a Cinderella story. And in many ways, it sort of mirrors my personal journey, which is the underdog, step by step, sort of dreaming the impossible and then accomplishing the impossible, right? So we can all dream. So having said that, I just wanted to, I
She's fading in and out, but we're hopefully going to get that all situated because, oh, there she goes. Let's see if that goes better.
life at all, because hear me now?
Yes, I do.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I just want to say, no matter what happens, never ever give up hope, because that when you don't give up hope and you stay resilient, you stay in the game, you will eventually accomplish everything that you've ever hoped for and more. And that's how I want to open the show with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And definitely more and more people need to do that, is knowing that they can accomplish those goals and all of that. I know that in the bio that was sent from Potter, they were talking about that you actually had come from hardship. And then, like I said, you mentioned UCLA. UCLA is doing tremendous. I was actually rooting for them to win that game, and they did pull it off. And now they're the lowest seed, and a lot of people don't give them a shot against Gonzaga. But I actually think that they can still surprise people as well. But I was just wondering if you could share a little bit about your journey of both going to UCLA, but also your journey of coming from as an immigrant here to the United States.
Yeah, so I came here in my early teens, about age 12 going into 13. I lived a pretty, we weren't like rich people by any means back there, but we had everything we needed. We were in front of the beach, and it's like a little island, so we didn't know much. My worldview was shaped mostly by what I read, like books that I read. We always dreamt about coming to the promised land, which is America. So we come to America, and in Korea, 99% of the people that live in South Korea are Korean. So we didn't have race issues. We did not have a lot of the, I would say, the divide that we witnessed when we landed here. That was the first time racial. So it was all these things that were new. The language was new. None of us spoke English. We didn't have a job. And then all our money got frozen. The Korean government did not let you leave at that time with any money. So my father found himself with $30 in his pocket. Hey, I went down to the local gas station and started pumping gas, So my parents worked at least 2 jobs each from what I remember. So I kind of grew up without really seeing much of them. I took care of my siblings. At that age, I still dropped off my brother at a daycare on the bus. So did all of that. And the thinking at that time was, when I came to America, it was the first time I really realized that the quickest path to success is to get a great education and work hard, and you're going to get your dream. Well, I realized at some point, I did get my degree, amazing school, learned a lot. But in order for me to start my business and growing that business from $0 to $500 million, I've had to unlearn a lot of things I learned in school, because what they teach you in school is sort of like a template that works for massive amount of people. It's not made for you, the individual. So a lot of the things, for example, if you start a business, you have a goal. Okay, you set a goal in corporate America, and you say, well, next year we're going to do $5 million in this division, and you don't meet that goal. Well, no big deal. You just get fired, or get another job, or maybe if you have a good enough excuse, you might even get promoted, right? If you are doing your own business and you miss your goal, you don't get another choice. So you really have to learn how to manage those risks.
Yeah, and you're right. And a lot of times folks don't understand that.
Yeah, and then a lot of people say, well, you have no chance at all. Like this, 75% of American small businesses go bankrupt the first year, and then of the ones that survive, 50% of them go out of business the second year. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So you just have to tune out everything, focus on yourself, and just understand what your strengths are. And just a lot of common sense and just grit, and you just keep going forward. It doesn't mean you have to be a nasty person by any means, just but being focused, understanding what you do. The other thing I love too is my business, like so I went on to get my MBA after that.
Right.
And I got that at the rivalry school at USC. And there they teach you in my business school. I learned all these things about the organizational behavior, the management styles, and negotiating style, all this stuff. And it was all like numbers and templates and case studies. And what I did in my business is, I do jewelry design for a living, which is highly emotional purchase. People purchase jewelry, for weddings, bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, christening, all those, momentous moments in your life. And I always say in customer service is that, for example, okay, when you go to business school, the first thing they teach you is that the most powerful words in marketing are free is one powerful word.
Mhm.
Second word is new and improved. They tell you this every every marketing class, even to now. I actually completely disagree with that. The most powerful word in marketing is you, the word YOU.
Right.
When you think about, instead of saying I love this and I love that and I designed this for, because I love this and I've always done this, I've used the word I like all these times, right?
Right.
But if you say the same thing and you say it with the word you, and I say I love this for you because I know that you are going to love wearing this, you are going to make memories wearing this wonderful piece that was designed specifically for you, and you saved all this money. So when you talk about, so it's all about that whole, one of my favorite quotes is Maya Angelou's quote is people will forget what you do, what you say, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So
Mhm.
in marketing, my marketing motto was all about the word you. So in every, all my literature, all my emails, even simple as Facebook posts, I always think about the word you. So there's like I use like a 5-to-1 ratio. So I use the word you 5 times for every I use. And
Oh,
it
wow.
actually works. It works really
Mhm.
well.
Wow. Because I know one of the things that our founders of the International Broadcast Media have talked about, and you actually just kind of alluded to it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts more about this and everything, is that they feel that we are teaching too much 18th century values in the 21st century. I know that both Kim Calhoun and Nick Palveda have talked about that, and they feel that we're not teaching our kids enough about true entrepreneurship skills, true finance skills, and even like just basically how to balance your books and things of that nature. So that's one of the kind of like missions of even this network is to try to get people more aware of the business community and all of that. But I want to know your thoughts. Is that something that you would agree with, that we're not doing enough of teaching our youth and just people in general? It doesn't have to be youth, can be people like in their midlife, like I'm in my late 50s and everything, or even in their further life that are not having an understanding of this. But I was wondering your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that statement. I think that, if you think about even when we were younger, when we were kids growing up, from that point to this point, the world had evolved. We have elevated, amplified, evolved all this time. And so for some reason, our communication skills, I mean, we now have internet where we can talk to anybody in Russia or wherever you want to. And yet the core messaging that we're using is very antiquated. It is something out of I don't know how many hundreds of years ago. So I do think that the business people who are successful, who have achieved a certain level of success, everybody who has achieved, incredible successes have done this by doing the right things. So I mean,
Right.
not all the time, but some of the right things. And when they do, they have a responsibility then to share it. Like I'm sharing with you, like with any entrepreneur with the dream, the first thing that you're going to have to remember is your customers' feelings. How how you make them feel. So my motto is like when you people don't buy product or service. When you sell them a bar of soap, or when you sell them, a dish at a restaurant, they're not really. That dish is not what you're selling. You're really selling them their experience. People are buying solutions. They're buying relationships. They're buying powerful stories. They're buying powerful memories. That's what they're doing. So you really do have to be cognizant of that. So when our schools teach our future students, use the word free. I mean, think about it. That's a trick word. If there's no free thing, right? Because they're building that in. So to me, that's already breaking the bond from the very first. Before you even build a relationship, you're already lying to them.
Right.
That kind of like, I'm just kind of, I was really appalled that people are paying $60,000 a year to send their kids to school for that kind of thing. So. Right. I'm completely in agreement with you on that. Yeah,
definitely. And I know one of the other things is I've got a lot of friends that are in the art field and in the creative field, and sometimes they oftentimes are too often, and you just mentioned free, kind of tricked into, or trying to like have people persuade them that they should do their work for free. And of course, I'm always arguing with them that they wouldn't have a plumber do it for free. They wouldn't have a mechanic do it for free. So why would they use their skill or give their skill away for free as well? So I do know that sometimes in the creative community, sometimes people use that free word as a means in order to get people to give them their talent, but not pay them what they're worth. And I think that that's something that is another trick that folks fall into. But I'm wondering your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I recently spoke. I was a speaker at the last two VidFest and VidFest, PodFest, trade show, right. And it was really interesting. I did a meetup after my speech, and there's like 50 different people that came to me online, talking about that very thing, about creative people being taken advantage of, or being their time for some reason is worth less than other people, right? Who are doing finance or whatever different fields that they're in. And they asked me for sort of like a solution, how I dealt with that, because I am in that creative field. And I have to tell you, if you have a lot of friends, and many of you who are listening right now, and you are a creative person, maybe stuck in a boring job, or you're a creative person actually making a living, maybe not a great living, but you're enjoying your life. The reality is this: you are a creative. Like if you were a content creator, if you are the person who's doing the marketing ads for your company, your creative juices have to be free to flow. Like you have to have creative people. We really, like, our feelings are everything. When I look at designs, I think of, does that make me feel trans? Does that make me feel, energized? I mean, I really think about everything for me starts with the feeling. So we are very in touch with our feelings, and we create what we feel that our customers who we are in touch with would love. But then it goes to some committee and some guy who doesn't understand a drawing or anything creative.
Victoria, freeze on me.
I tell all my creative people, just and convince people that your time is worth, everybody. God gave us, all of us, exact amount of time, 24 hours a day, and we have a responsibility to use it well, right? So you just have to believe in yourself and just keep plugging away, because that's what happened. That's how I built my business. Because if I listen to like somebody between me and, I love being on TV, because when I'm talking to my customers on TV, millions of them on TV, I'm talking to them directly. I'm not talking to them through a finance officer or through, some guy in logistics telling me what I should be creating. So I think the world would be a better place if they actually gave everybody a fair chance at their opinion being heard.
No, I definitely agree with you that the world would be a better place if they did that and everything. Another thing that people have been surprised by, and I was wondering how your business was going, but I've got friends that are in the real estate business that are in that part of marketing, and they've been surprised at how well it's been doing during the pandemic. I guess more in the corporate side, but even some on the home side. And I was wondering how your business has been going over there in the West Coast in that regards, because I know sometimes my friends were thinking that we're in the middle of a pandemic, so that would be one business that would slow down, but apparently it's doing. It may be one of those recession-proof businesses, but a lot of times folks don't think of it as that. But I was just wondering your thoughts.
In real estate, I didn't catch that.
Yes,
Yeah.
in real estate.
Yeah, so my husband's in real estate, so I should have had him over here, but I see this tangentially here. I think that COVID, if you look at the silver lining, just a few little silver traumatic experience that it's no fault of their own by any means. And, we can debate whether or not this policy or that government or this city or whoever made the right decisions. But, we can't second judge what the facts. But the one thing that I know, all of us have shifted our priorities. So now if you ask somebody 5 years ago, what's your American dream? You might have most often heard, I want a yacht, I want a plane, I want to, make all this money, I want to do all these things. Today, if you ask people, a lot of them, I want to be with my family, I want to spend more time with my kids, I want to take care of I want to take care of myself. I think that a lot of those, our priorities, our definition of the dream is shifting and has shifted. And I think some of that actually has to do with the home, because that's your sanctuary. And I think a lot of people are, willing to drive longer, willing to live in the suburbs, willing to invest back into the priority. I mean, that's my scientific theory, if you can ask me that.
Now that makes a lot of sense and everything. I was also wondering, now you've had 23 years experience of doing this, and you've had the pleasure of being on both HSN and Shop HQ. But I was just wondering, one of the things you talk about is this 7-step system. So what are some of the steps that you think folks should be involved in creating and turning their business into a profit? Because I think a lot of times entrepreneurs go into business and they don't necessarily have as much of a business plan or much of a plan in general as they should have. And it sounds to me like that's one of the things that you're trying to get people to do, is to have an actual game plan. And I do think that a lot of times folks don't go in with that game plan mentality.
Yeah. So for those of you who are listening, I have written a book called $1 Million Hobbies, and it is the 7-step foolproof system. If you know anything about my story, I've gone from 0 to $500 million. So I now have financial means to share, my story and get my book out. I didn't write that book for money. I wrote that book so that everyone with a dream who is willing to work for it can get to the promised land. So I did all this research, and I found that many, many books teach you how to start a business. And if you really get down to it, if you really, really want to start a business, you can. But does anything out there teach you a system where you can then sustain your business, with low risk, so you can sustain your business and then achieve explosive growth? So I've got this 7-step system, which a lot of people might think it's kind of very, how would I say it, non-traditional way of doing it, because the first thing in my book is about risk management. So I don't want anyone to go bankrupt trying to achieve their dream, because, every penny you lose trying to achieve that dream is money wasted and time wasted, right? So risk-free management. So it's starting a business with very little money. I would say $1,000, $5,000 or under. It's really simple. Secondly, so it's called the Do It Now system. So number one is defining your dream. And I say that because when you say, well, I don't know, why do I want to define the dream? You do have to define the dream. You have to be very specific on what you want. It can't be like, oh, I want to have a lot of money. It needs to be like, I want to be XYZ in 6 months, 5 months, and I'm going to be putting in 20 hours a week or whatever hour, 2.5 hours a day, whatever it is that you put in there because it's a direct result of what you get. So the first one is defining your dream. Second one is overcoming your fear. Okay, our society here. When I first came to America, I didn't really know anything. I was a little teenager, but I learned a lot of things that I didn't learn back in Korea. One of which was to be fearful of everything. Uh, you know, you fear judgment from your peers. You fear people, just telling you all the time that you're going to fail. You fear because this society has too many experts that tell you what's good for you, and you know your body, you know your finances, you know how your brain works, you know what time you want to get up in the morning. You are your boss. You have to design your life the way it fits you, not some template that works for 90 million people. What could work for 90 million people, it may not work for you. So you need to do that. So the dream, defining your dream, setting your goals, that's achievable, that's, that you can track, that you can measure and tweak. Second is overcoming your fear. And then the third one is igniting the big idea. Because a lot of people who are brand new in business have too many ideas. They get completely, a lot of, if you take an artist, they can usually do a lot of other things because they've had to do other things to make a living, right? So you have to pick one idea, the one that gives you the most amount of, the biggest opportunity. And sometimes it's not what you think it is. So that igniting your big idea, and that has to do with, so anyway, figuring out where you're gifted, because I believe every single person was gifted with something. But we're too busy and too exhausted and too busy listening to experts that we don't even think about what's my gift. And if you ask 70% of Americans, they don't think, I'm not gifted. They'll tell you that. Well, but you are. Okay, so you are. You have a gift. And it's not any less or any. I truly believe that. So you've got not your idea. And then the next thing is finding the target audience. And that's a very, very important thing. And I have a system of finding your target audience. And when you talk about your target audience, it can't be really general, like, I'm going to sell to women. I made that mistake when I first came to jewelry because I thought all women love jewelry. Well, they do. But if you're a small business, you can't go after all women. Think about like doing a Facebook ad and saying, I'm Victoria Wig. I have this gorgeous jewelry. All women, women, this would be great for women. Come in, just buy this for $25 and 25% off. It's okay, but it's kind of blah, right? But if I came up with an ad that said, I'm Victoria Wig and I specialize in millennial bridals. And, if you're getting married in the next 6 months, so now you know where the millennial bridals hang out. Right. They're looking at the knot. They're, looking at bridal magazines. So it makes it a lot easier. And it also, gives you a focus on, you're doing wedding rings. You're not doing brooch pins and everything else, right? So right. Targeting your audience, figuring out where they hang out in massive numbers so that you can be effective marketing at this, right? So, and then now the end is negotiate the deal. So you have to understand how to negotiate, and negotiating is going to be, it's my biggest chapter in the book, because, if you look at the best negotiators in the world, they're like little toddlers. Watch a toddler negotiate with their mothers or grandmothers, they always win. And the only equipment is like a few years, right? Batting eyelashes. We're born with that. But by the time we get to middle school in America, we learn to sort of undo our negotiating skills because we're taught to follow authority, listen to experts. We shouldn't have any opinions, and we should conform. So all the negotiating stuff go out the window. So there's all these, and then when you go to graduate school, I went to one of the top-notch graduate schools. They don't teach anything about negotiating. And I think it's really important because, as we move back from COVID to the new world order, we're negotiating new land leases, leases in your commercial offices, negotiating your new pay, negotiating your new conditions of working. Negotiating skills is everything. And so that's the next one. And then, in the what now? Is optimizing or monetizing. So optimize to monetize your things. So, you're maximizing resources, all the resources, your human resources, intel resources, everything else. And then the last thing is to win the game, basically staying. And then I have a bonus chapter, which is to innovate and dominate. So for me, I dominated the TV jewelry designer world. That's how I pretty much became, as successful as I had become. And that requires you to elevate, evolve, and innovate. So that's the 7-step system.
And what would you tell folks? Because you were talking, I was thinking that jewelry. A lot of times, it's like a lot of other kinds of forms of commerce. That there's people that think that it's such a flooded market, which you've done quite well in what many people would think would be a flooded market. And it sounds like part of what you did was you fine-tuned the market, so you were specifically targeting a specific audience and a specific thing and everything. But a lot of times, folks don't do that. A lot of times, even when folks go into business, they kind of like have this grandiose idea of what the business will be. Because I've talked to people that have said, I want to open up a restaurant, but the restaurant's going to have a bookstore. The bookstore is going to have this, going to have that, and then it's like it becomes too big of a picture. And I was wondering if you've run into that and what you tell folks when they give you those kind of like pictures of a multi-level business, because it's not just one business; it winds up being a multi-level business.
That's crazy. Okay, so for all of you who are listening, just listen to me very carefully. This is I think is one of the most important mistakes the amateurs make. Okay, going after everybody. Okay, if you're going to be everybody, if you're trying to be everybody, you don't mean anything to anybody. Okay, so I use this example all the time. This was no joke. There was a restaurant across the street from my office years ago, and the sign actually said, I forget what the name of the restaurant was, but the sign, the subtitle of the restaurant was El Salvadorian sushi, kosher Hebrew, some restaurant, all these things. Would you ever go eat sushi at that restaurant? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Would you, if you're like a Jewish kosher person, would you go trust that? I mean, the point, and this family was very happy, large family, and they had like loved ones but they all married. So they had a woman from Israel that is a daughter-in-law. So they had somebody in the family who was connected to all those cuisines, and they used to call themselves a UN, basically a family full of UN people. But you know what? You're not going to eat that. So this is what you were just describing is exactly the same thing. So a lot of beginning entrepreneurs, I've been there. I understand why you go there, why you think that you have to reach out to all these people, because you don't believe that one thing is going to work. So you are kind of like putting your toes in all the different waters here. Okay. But just remember these two things. There's only like two major ways you can make money. You can make big money. One of them is to do the same thing that everybody else is doing already, like coffee, for example. Everybody's serving coffee, right? Well, Starbucks somehow managed to charge 5 times more and got the biggest market share doing the exact same thing. So you either go after a business that's already there, completely flooded and saturated, but if you can find a way to do it either cheaper, faster, better than everybody else, or you can find a way to do it, elevate it so high, the experience so high that you can charge 5 times more. Right. So one of those things I use in my book is McDonald's. Okay, people have been serving hamburgers at all these restaurants, but they found a way to do it cheaper, faster, better, and they became probably like the top 5 American corporations in the world. Then Starbucks is the other way. They did something right. So that's one way. So when you see a market that's flooded, like jewelry, restaurants, whatever, the best thing you could do is pick the smallest niche you can so that you can be better than anybody else in that niche. I mean, so I went from, when I first started my business, I was like, okay, well, everybody loves jewelry. I don't know any woman who doesn't love jewelry. I don't know any woman who doesn't want a wedding ring when she gets married. So my market's everybody, all women. Okay, well, that makes sense. But then I thought, geez, like all women have some guy who loves me. My brother, my husband, my boyfriend, my father, my brother-in-law, who knows, right? So I should market to the guys too, because they love their women. So they want to buy women's jewelry. That makes sense. Well, if I'm doing an ad, what am I going to say? right? I have this gorgeous jewelry, and the only thing you can say is it's cheaper than anybody else. It's 50% off. A lot of people do that. But what I did was, at the time I started my business, women were I was the first generation woman that actually went to work in a professional capacity. So they actually went to, we got dressed in professional outfits, went and had job titles like director of marketing, for example. So, and I don't know if you remember, we had to wear like these white, like button down shirts with little bow ties, like looking like men. So, the diamond jewelry and things like that look too flashy. You look like you're just like either a country bumpkin or you had self-esteem issues. So I designed jewelry for the workplace where it made you look polished, understated, elegant, but just a little pop to make you different than everybody else. And I basically, my advertisement said, not just all the messaging said, hey, I have a collection that's going to make you look polished, make you look successful. All these things that you can't say about yourself, your jewelry can say that if it's the right piece. So here are here are 6 pieces, the must-have pieces. My inventory control was like super simple. My messaging was really simple. And the other beautiful thing about this is women who went to work needed to wear jewelry. They needed to have some little pop, and they made money.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So I then became the go-to person. So, I showed up at Saks, Neiman's, everywhere. They all bought it for some ridiculous prices. So going back to my theory, you have 2 ways to make money. One of them is to do what everybody else is doing. So you want to go to a flooded market because the demand is high.
Right.
You just have to carve out the niche that is most suitable for you. The second way you make money is to invent something that nobody else had ever done before. Okay, and that's a tougher road because you don't know if there's a demand. Usually, when there is nothing like that ever before, there is no demand. Okay, but there are times when there is demand. For example, but sometimes there are things that have a high demand, but nobody's ever done before. Okay, for example, you take sunscreen. Okay, we know it's good for us. So there's nothing out there that gives you sunscreen protection. You put it on one day, it lasts you 30 days. There's nothing like that. You put it on one day and, maybe it can just last you all day. You don't have to reapply. There's nothing like that either. There's no sunscreen that gives you 100% protection, right? It's 25%, 50%, whatever. Then you got to reapply every 25 minutes. I actually looked into this because I wanted something like that. And there's no sunscreen that doesn't go on that sticky white looking thing. So why is there such a thing? Well, there are, I researched into this, and there is like a lot of, just hundreds of millions of dollars and 10, 20 years of research before that could actually work. So for a small business person, that's kind of stuff is not realistic. But even in small businesses, if you found a new way to pave your concrete or whatever, you still have to then figure out how to educate the masses, all your customers, why this is good for you, what it actually will save you time. If you think of like solar energy, for example, they're still more expensive than regular electricity. So for a small business person, your best bet is to go after where the market's flooded, but you're just going to have to pick the smallest niche possible and be the best person in that field, because even then, that's enough. That's still going to be millions of dollars. Look at what I've done. It's just completely nuts. So, did I answer your question sufficiently?
Yeah, you did, definitely. Because as you were saying that, I was wondering about. I was actually watching a commercial recently. It was one of the big chicken franchises and everything. And part of what they were doing was teasing one of the big burger franchises for actually kind of infringing in their territory. So I was wondering your thoughts about that as well, because sometimes you'll see different corporations kind of like going into another person's field as well. So like the burger place might start making chicken dishes, or the chicken dish might start making vegetable dishes or things of that nature. But I was just wondering, as an entrepreneur, do you think that that's something that the big companies should be doing, or does that not make sense to you when they kind of like go into those infringement kind of fields of going into somebody else's part of the business, if it's the food business, for example?
Yeah, so a great example of that is how McDonald's acquired Chipotle. Right. So here's what happened. McDonald's, you know, the happy, what do they call, Happy Toys or whatever the box thing that they have. I used to know this when my kids were younger, but the Happy Meal place, right? The Golden Arches. So when they wanted to get market share and they wanted to do a brand extension, McDonald's was so well known for that thing. They didn't want to mess with it. So they actually went to, because they could tell the direction of, you know, the fast food was actually going more toward the Chipotle model. So instead of changing their whole model, they decided to just acquire a separate division that does that. So, you know, Chipotle became a little bit, you know, sassy, spicier, more modern, healthy food you could have. So there's one model you can do this. And then you have other models where if you're such a dominant player, you know, if you are, you know, like a Domino's Pizza, for example, you know, I'm not a real pizza eater. I actually don't even eat meat. But if you're such a dominant player in that one field, offering like chicken wings, buffalo wings, or breadsticks, that would be a natural extension of what they're already doing.
Right.
So, but that's different than Domino's coming in and going, you know what? I think I can just go ahead and like overtake Chick-fil-A, for example. That would be tough. So in a small business environment, I think until you get to the $400 or $500 million business, I mean, there's plenty of business to be had up to that point. And then you can play with your money. I mean, I am right now, I myself have done a few little brand extensions, but they have to make sense. You know, for me as a small business person, you know, I have a family. I've got my 2 kids. By the way, I've designed my business around their schedules. So, you know, I got up every morning at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and all my customers are East Coast. So 6 a.m. is 9 a.m. New York, and it's like
Right.
1 or 2 p.m. in England. So I actually opened distribution there first. I didn't have a single customer in California because they were very demanding. And then 5 p.m. my time is 9 a.m. Asia the next day because they're 17 hours ahead. So I had distribution there. So, you know, in this economy, I mean, it was hard for me when I phones, we didn't have an international phone. In this economy, if you're thinking about opening a business and you're a young mom, you're a millennial mom, you're a grandmother, you could do all this at the comfort of your own home, which is really amazing. You know, you just got to be very, very smart and you got to just want it more than anything else. And just, you know, and the other thing I would say is like, you know, go get a mentor. It's always nice to have somebody who walked a few steps before you to share where all the landmines are, so that they won't help you avoid all your problems because new problems rise all the time. But it's good to know, hey, when I run into this trouble, it's normal. You know, that I can, you know, other people have handled this and I can handle it. Maybe I can handle it slightly better than them. So if you can find a little bit, you know, somebody who's a mentor, that's huge, because 90% of what you're going to be facing is mental, I think.
You know, you actually just mentioned a very important thing that I know we talked about on this platform and everything. And I was wondering your thoughts about the importance of having a coach, because definitely it sounds to me like you're thinking a coach is something that is almost a necessity of any sort of business. But I was wanting to know your thoughts about having a coach and who some of your coaches have been in your business, as well as some of the people that were your inspirations. I know you definitely mentioned Maya Angelou, but some of your other business inspirations as well.
Yeah. So when I first started my business, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a coach. I had no money, no inside connections, no industry expertise. So I actually did it the hardest way possible. And that's partly why I wrote the book, because that's the book that I wish I had. It may not be perfect. It may not be a perfect fit for your particular needs or business, but just basic principle of, you know, finding the right target market. You know, somebody who's listening to this show right now, who might be an engineer, who might be, you know, completely different than jewelry, might go, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. Like, you know, if I'm going to go build like horse rails or something, I shouldn't be, you know, attracting women who make jewelry, right? So a lot of the principles will still apply. And, but I always wish that especially female entrepreneurs, female mentors were not there at all because, we were all trying to hide our kids. We don't have any, because the minute you told me your kids, like, you didn't get hired, right? So, so, I'm an avid reader. So I read a lot of biographies, and when you read these books and you look at people who just had some horrific things happen to them and just rose above and still like just keep plugging along and inspire people, that gave me a lot of inspiration to know that no matter what, I mean, even if I'm sitting there, just buried under the ashes, as long as I'm breathing, I'm getting up and doing it again. So that's kind of the only inspiration I had. But having, and I'm not saying it has to be me, but anybody in your midst, because we now have millions of women who have succeeded. I'm not, I'm no Oprah Winfrey, but look at just so many people from that level all the way down to like a senior vice president, or your community leaders. We've got political leaders. So just, find, if you can, hook up to a women's organization. There's a great women's organization. There's several actually. Just look in your city, and if you want to be plugged into one, you can all write to me, and I'll, I don't want to like plugging anybody, but the ones that I kind of help out and things like that. But get a mentor, because it'll just make it easier. A lot of times, even if you can just have a person to talk to, who, especially artists, like my husband's like totally engineer, finance kind of a person, and he doesn't understand art at all. So, I think it's just easier if you have, and be inspired by a lot of people who've had struggled. It doesn't have to be in your field, but, a lot of people who have struggled, like you look at, someone like Nelson Mandela, Maya Angelou. I mean, it's just what it took for them to still stay sane and rise above, and just inspire millions of people. So I still read quite a bit, and I'm combing through all, like every day I comb through like anybody who's done something kind of unique in business. I kind of like put a note in my brain, and I go, well, that's kind of cool. You know what I mean? Like just the other day, my daughter and I went to this place called Ice Kimo. It's ice kimo, like an Eskimo, but it's an ice kimo. And so we were driving by, and she's like, I wonder what that is. And I said, well, if I ever had like a shave ice place, like, cone, I would call it ice kimo. So we were curious enough to actually to stop, park the car, check it out. And sure enough, it was like a shave ice place. But they do it in a very different way. It was just really cool. So go ahead.
No, Jane, I was fascinated by this ice cream place. I wanted to hear more about it and everything, but definitely I was interested in that because a lot of times people do interest in entrepreneurship ideas. One thing that was crossing my mind as you were talking, as I know when I've talked to a lot of folks in the field of entrepreneurship, we still know that unfortunately there's, and definitely in the workplace in general, the glass ceiling as well as the pay gap experience and everything that sometimes women go through and all of that. And this is Women History Month. So I was just wondering some of your thoughts about ways that we can conquer and deal with that as well, because I do know that that is still an issue, maybe not so much for a solo entrepreneur, but definitely in the business space in general.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to, I'm putting my mind together with a few friends of mine to actually change that, because the perception still is, the glass ceiling is not as obvious as when I first began my journey. When I first began working in corporate America, we were the very first group of women that, I mean, we were even judged just for going outside of the home to work. Some of the people like, you go to work. So, from that point to where we are, the gap has closed a lot. I mean, it's a lot closer now, but there's still this, especially if I go to the Midwest, because I travel all over the world and all over the country. I mean, there's plenty of countries where women are not even allowed in the boardroom. But here in America, you still have this perception that the leaders who are teams that are led by like an MBA, men who are in their 40s, like at their peak, are more productive. That's absolutely not true at all. In fact, I've got a very good friend of mine. She and I we just did a YouTube show, and I send you the link for this too, is that we believe that female-led, women-led teams are more productive, and I can prove that. And I'll tell you why. If you just go to like a large company, the TV networks are pretty large. If you go to the large company and you go to conference room floors, and you go from conference to conference room, you can always tell which ones were led by women before if anybody even walks up, because the women-led conference rooms are going to be filled with food, drinks, like little questionnaires, because women are DNA coded to sort of nurture their people. We're moms. And so we rarely are happy walking away with the winner takes all kind of a negotiation. Even if it's possible, we don't like it. We want everybody to be happy. We want everyone to feel like their tummies are full, that they mattered. So if you're going to build an incredible team, who would you rather have? So I'm actually, and I think that if you're one of the women who's at the table but still doesn't have a voice yet, those people don't have a lot of say so, because they think like you're just bitter, or you're just jealous or whatever. But I think someone like me, people who have achieved, who have a say so, who have something to say. Look, you can you show me how you made your $500 million last time? You know what I mean? Kind of puts them in place. I think that a lot of women who are exceptionally successful should bring those points out now, because I think it's time that they're being heard a little bit. Because a lot of times too, people don't realize what they sound like. So if you actually, so when somebody in my negotiation chapter, when somebody says, well, you were just awful because of this, or, you should have done this. And I usually just say, so I don't offend you anymore, Mark. So what I heard you say is that you thought that I should have offered to help you with X, Y, Z, even though you had reasons to believe that I didn't know that you needed help, right? Is this what I heard? And then they're like, well, maybe not, like, because they're too proud to say I was wrong. But, you can still get that out of them. So a lot of times I'll just restate what they say, because they don't even know what they sound like sometimes.
Right.
They're too stressed out, or, they're fighting their own demons inside, or whatever it is. So, yeah, there's just a lot of work to do. And
but a whole lot of work to do. I know my mom was actually a leader in the nonprofit world, actually a national leader in the nonprofit world, having served on a couple of national boards and everything, and definitely a state leader here in North Carolina. She's now retired, but definitely a lot of that kind of leadership quality is what she brought to the table. And a lot of times folks were surprised because she had that toughness that you're talking about, but also that sensitivity as well.
Right.
Combining both of them together, and definitely was a force to be reckoned with, and still is a force to be reckoned with, even though now she's enjoying retirement and just taking care of her dog and my two nephews when they decide to go visit and everything, since I don't have any young ones of my own. But definitely I've seen that kind of experience that you're talking about. I was wondering really quickly, do you think that this new hybrid world, or the new world order as you just called it earlier, is going to actually make the business landscape for entrepreneurs even more level? Because I've heard a lot of business owners and business people, just general people, talking about the fact that they're making pivots now, because a lot of us are working from home. We're not expecting to go totally back to work, because a lot of people are saying that even when COVID is under control, when we have this herd immunity, that we'll be doing a mixture, like working from home and working from whatever that office space is. And I've even heard some people speculating that some offices and colleges may even wind up being condensed, because they might not have as much of their space being used for its traditional roles, like the classrooms might be used for other things as well. But I'm just wondering, how do you think that this era that we're in now with the pandemic will impact entrepreneurship?
Okay, so I'm so glad you asked me that. I think that's a really, really great question. I started my business in the middle of the 1989, the Ronald Reagan recession.
Mm-hmm.
That was like a complete financial meltdown there. And I started the business. Jewelry, if you think about it, nobody needs it to like eat, right? Nobody needs it. It's not a requirement for human survival. So I started my business in the middle of that landscape. The point I'm trying to get at is The biggest businesses that we know of today, we're talking about companies like IBM, Procter and Gamble, Hewlett Packard, Burger King. All these companies started in the middle of depression, financial meltdowns. So anytime there is this kind of an economic disaster, there comes a huge opportunity. With every disaster, there is more of an opportunity than the business that get ruined. And history shows that the business that start in a horrible economic times actually have a better track record of surviving and thriving. So I just named a few. And the reasons being this, a lot of your competition is just kind of self-destructs. So we know, for example, in restaurants, at least 30% of those restaurants are not ever coming back. So if you can start a business, any business, with 30% less competition, wouldn't you love that?
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
So, at least every third restaurant in your town is gone, maybe fourth one is gone. And then the other couple that are there are barely hanging by their threads, but they haven't evolved. So then here you come and you start your business because you see a need that is not being met. So a lot of times these small businesses that start in the middle of a pandemic start because to meet a real need that wasn't there before. And then you get no competition anyway, then what the few people that is in position to compete with you, they're clueless because that's why they're still hanging on by their thread. So, it's really interesting that the biggest businesses that we can think of in our lifetime are all businesses that started in the middle of this. So if you're thinking about entrepreneurship now is your time. That's why my thing is called Do It Now. Secondly, when it comes to going back to work, the new normal, I don't think this is up yet, but I actually recorded 2 episodes in my podcast, which is like a series of them. The one is called How to Pivot Your Business. And then the second and third are how to deal with difficult people, because the difficult people that were difficult before COVID are going to be more difficult when you go back. Mm-hmm. If you think it's the truth, if you think about why were they difficult? Why are difficult people difficult, right? Low self-esteem. It's all about them. They're always the victim. They don't like happy people. I don't know why, but they're difficult. And so these people are the ones that needed other people to bother them, to somehow make them lesser than, or whatever. They didn't get that. So when you go back to work, they're going to be hyper difficult. So I give them like 5-step tools on get rid of them. You can't shut them out. And a lot of times they're actually not bad people. They just, they just don't know how to react or, whatever. So I give you some tips on why they're difficult has to do with how you handle them, I guess. So, I have things like you can acknowledge their emotions, that they're hurt, they're upset, they're whatever, but don't engage. Don't have your own emotional level match theirs.
Right.
How to handle difficulty, the new normal. I don't want to have to go to work dealing with difficult people 5 days a week. Maybe I can cut it down to 3. Maybe I can work on different shifts. So that negotiating thing again, it comes into play. But I do think that in this like a period of change, and that change isn't going to happen, overnight. It's going to be, we're going to all have to find that what or an employer, hiring employer, that you have this opportunity to carve out exactly what you want that's actually better for everybody involved. So, I'm all for fairness. I mean, I don't want to make money. I'm an employer. I don't want to make money at their expense, at their, off their backs. I mean, I want them to be happy. I want them to have the best employee experience ever. And if you have the will to do that, there is plenty of ways you can accomplish all those goals.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think is one of the number one things that entrepreneurs, the number one or the top mistakes that you think that entrepreneurs are making now? You've alluded to some of them, but I'd love to hear some of the ones that you heard or that you've dealt with that still surprise you to this day, because I'm sure there's some that you're surprised about when entrepreneurs make them. But what are some of the mistakes that you think folks make when they decide to become entrepreneurs?
I think that a lot of people like think that starting a business, like just saving a ton of money, doing everything they can, they start a business and business goes well for a few months, 4 or 5 months. Opening day is great, and I can't tell you how many times somebody will say, how did it go? How was your opening day? Like a little wine tasting company or something. Oh, it's great. It was wall to wall, packed with people. Blah blah blah. They think they're all doing the right things. People don't realize anything new. Human beings are they go to the same places all the time. So when there's something new, a new variety, the idea, America defines a new customer and how I define a new customer. Okay, so let's say you're running a restaurant, a brand new restaurant, and you have an opening day. Everybody in the world, you tell your church, you tell community, you go to schools, you network with all this stuff, and you end up with this great opening day. Well, so many these restaurant owners are like, oh my God, I had 300 people. We had like 2 hours of waiting. People couldn't get in. Well, guess what? If that's true, in corporate America, you would say we had 300 new customers. Okay. Well, I say they're not new customers. They came and checked you out.
Right.
If for the next 6 months, guess what? They hated the experience. And those people not only are not coming back, they will tell 10 people why they are not ever going to go back. So not only are they not customers, succeed or customer. See, in my business, if you get your customer, I track how long it takes for them to come back. So I'm trying to shorten that time. I'm trying to make sure they come back, and that they come back within 30 days. Because if they come back so let's say like you sell like soap bars. Okay, you sell like organic soaps that are good for you.
Yeah.
They take it home. First day you sell 300 packs. They take it home. Guess what? Most stores have 30 days money back guarantee. And if you don't give it, American Express or whatever credit card they charge will give you the 30 days. Okay. So they have 30 days to bring it back if it's not good for them. Or if it doesn't deliver on the promise you made that the product is going to do. So you didn't have that customer. But if they go back home and they go 30 days later, they go, oh my God, I bought the mango collection last time. And, I should have bought the coconut at the same time. Do you have this? But they take it back. But they liked it, right? So the entrepreneurs, a lot of times they get confused. Entrepreneurship is a marathon. This is not a little sprint. So as hard as it is for you to start your business, the hardest job is to sustain your business.
Right.
And that's when your challenge comes in. And I think that a lot of times people just don't have that toughness to problem solve. A lot of entrepreneurs, we just put our hearts and soul and minds and everything we own into this. And so you're emotional. And when, something doesn't go right, they go this, the high of, oh my God, like, it was wall to wall, everybody was great. And the next month is like, oh my, what if I go bankrupt? They're just like going back and forth.
Right.
You're not going bankrupt. You're not going to be a millionaire in a month. Okay. It's going to be a little path here. That's really the best advice I can give you. You gotta kind of tone it out, just on what's
Makes
going on.
sense. Because the other thing I know that a lot of times people think about is target marketing. And I know even on this network and everything, they talk about that. But I'm just wondering, how effective do you think target marketing is, and particularly internet target marketing? I know a lot of times people will try to think about the nature of target marketing, and they'll think, like, for example, your jewelry business, let me go find all the jewelry groups that are on Facebook and specifically target those jewelry Facebook groups and everything. Or things of that nature, buy the advertising money to go there and everything. So do you think that target marketing is effective, or is it not as effective as people think it is?
Well, target marketing is, it can be very effective if you know what you're doing. It's a lot like the word power. Like power is not good, it's not bad. It depends on who has it and how they use it. So target marketing has a lot to do with execution of it. I mean, it's how you define your target. So, I because I'm limited in time today, I would love to discuss this whole subject again, because I'm very passionate about this. Target marketing, for example, if you say, well, who's your target market? And if somebody says, well, okay, jewelry lovers ages 45 to 65, I'm just making this up as I go. Well, that's a huge. Well, let me give you another market. If you're a financial advisor, okay, and if you say my target market is wealthy people, okay, well, you say, well, what's wealthy people? And you say, well, if you put that keyword search into Google, you're going to end up with something like 100 million people that are millionaires, because they count the equity in their home and everything else. But that's a lot of people to target market. It's not how would I say it, cost-effective way to market something.
Right.
If you say looking for retirees with $10 million or more, you're going to end up with like 50,000 people. So basically, it depends. That's why I keep saying you got to niche down, because from that foundation, once you own it, you can expand out. So like in jewelry, if you say, well, my target market is women 45 to 65. So you got the gender, you got the age group, and then you can say, well, and I want their average income to be, let's say, $100,000. Okay, so you got that. That's different than, if you marketed something like, my target market is, women 45 and over, let's say, who love color gemstone jewelry. Mm-hmm. That's different diamonds. Or you could say, I love people who love, conflict-free jewelry. That's a whole other, so depending on how you slice your target market, you can be extremely effective. So like if you're selling color gemstones, I actually have color stones and I have diamonds, and I market them differently because they're different customers altogether. People who love color gemstones tend to love like little critters, like, beautiful colors. They're a little bit more into nature. That's why, so that it's a different interest group, different taste level. So it depends on who, how experienced you are in target marketing. And I think that the tendency right now with all the internet marketers is all about data collection. They don't know how to analyze the data. So, for example, like I know my demographics, search at all the TV stations about who my customers are. Okay. They watch Oprah Winfrey. They watch Hallmark channels. So we know a lot about what they do when buying my jewelry. They have families. They're mostly women who have kids, that are about to get married. So that helps me a lot with my bridal business. So it's not just numbers and age and income. You got to break it down more. Going to be more. You've got 30 million out. Yes, you can do that, and it could be pretty effective because your payback could be good, and you got huge money to invest for a long, long time. Small business, you really have to hit the target like a bullseye. You really do have to be able to kind of analyze it to that level. And I like I said in future, if I ever get invited back in your show, I will describe some of that. Like we should have a whole section just on that, because that is a real important issue.
No, I definitely would love to have you back, and definitely love to have a further conversation. I know we only had a limited time on this, but you're definitely welcome back on anytime that you want to come back, because definitely I'm planning a lot and everything. But one of the things I was going to say is a lot of times people, like I said, you came in as an immigrant from Korea, and now you've also run this $1 million business and everything. And everybody always says that they want to be a $1 million business or a millionaire or things of that nature, not understanding the hardships that can come with that as well. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit about some of the things that you learned about creating $1 million business that shocked you about that. Because a lot of times people say they want to be part of that family or part of that group of folks that are doing that, but they don't know that all is involved with it. I've never come close to it, but I can imagine.
Yeah. So, I think in one of my first episodes, when I first started my podcast, that was the first episode I did, which is when you have absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing. I've never seen like barbed wires around schools, and in Korea, like I never saw that before I came to America. I lived in East LA, and it was a really tough area, and so we didn't have any money. I remember my dad like got a single orange, and he cut it into 8 sections because there were 7 of us. And my brother is the only boy, so he ended up with 2 pieces. So, coming from that background, what does it take to not ever give up on your dream? What does it take to and that is idea to have to try it, because figure out any way I could sustain my life. I was working like 16 hours a day between commute. Like I had an hour and 10-minute commute each way, and then I was working like 12 to 13 hours a day, and I was just exhausted. And at some point, I realized, here I'm making really small money, peanuts, and my boss just made like an extra $150 million a year as a largely part of what I was doing for him, because he was also an immigrant. So I thought, I'm making him like, just tons of money. And I know I can do this. If I can do it for them, and I remember I didn't need to make $450 million. I just needed to make, I wanted to make just 35. I did what I love the most. I just poured my heart, and I was very, very sensible about making sure that my expenses didn't go out of whack. And my dreams and my desire to succeed like didn't overpower the task at hand. You really have to have a plan, and I stuck to the plan. So I avoided like this hyper growth in the beginning, because that is how you can go bankrupt fast too. Because hyper growth means your growth line is very jagged. So in those one of those dips, you can just go out of business. So I really resisted all that. So I think, at some point it wasn't really about the money. It was just about doing what I love and being best at it. And that's where I'm at today. So you just do what you love, and the money actually will flow in faster than if you chase the money and didn't have the heart for it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That you got to definitely do that old adage. You have to do what you love, and then the money will follow. I think that sometimes people are forced into jobs, or they are inherited the money, and they're not necessarily doing what they love and all of that. And I can even think of some famous people that I'm not sure they're satisfied with what they're doing, and therefore they don't do it as effectively as they could, and all of that. That's just my thoughts about some of our famous folks that are there. I'm just wondering, and this is actually comes to another conversation that could get really expansive and everything, but I know you've got a limited amount of time. But one of the things I was curious about is 2 things. One, when you have finances and the finances are available, do you think that it is the responsibility, or you think that people that have the means should do their part of social justice? Because I know you definitely talked about some of the work that you're doing in the field of women's rights and things of that nature. And I know that definitely some of our athletes have been doing a lot of work around Black Lives Matter and things of that nature. But I was wondering, as an Asian American, is that like a cause that you're going to be working on as well, trying to make sure that people are aware of the Asian society and the positive aspects of the Asian society, when so many negative attacks are going against that aspect of our society and our community?
Yeah, that's really unfortunate, but I struggle a lot about the amount of hatred that sometimes it's just hard for me to fathom out there. But my solution to just not everything that's wrong in society, but just a huge dent into society is, going back all the way back to like the Holocaust, and even before that, the slavery and all that stuff. If you look at that, I just think that education, like just not education necessarily in degrees, but just educating people, so that I think all of that plays a huge part in it. I've traveled all listened to. I mean, there are places where they will just throw out somebody from a rooftop because you're gay or you're whatever. I just think that if you sit down and have an actual conversation with somebody and they get to know you one-on-one, I just think that that just makes a better place. So, in business too, a lot of our divide about, your ideas are bad, my ideas are good, to all the social justice issues that we have, I think much starts from, kids who basically, for generations to come, understand that standard. And if you kind of talk both ways and you don't set the example, I think I have a lot of school teachers in my family. I think a lot of the actions, and because, kids are really small, the only worldview they have is from their home. So you can always tell what their parents are made of when their kids come to school. So yeah, I do believe that we all have the responsibility to right wrongs, but your hands are really tied because it is such a big tide. You know what I mean? It's not like something that one or two people can do. It just needs to be a massive effort.
Yeah,
sadly.
that makes sense. What do you think some of the, because I've had a couple of friends from different societies. I've had some that have shared. I've got African American and also some Native American background, but I've also had friends that are Asian as well as some that are Latin American. But what are some of the misconceptions you think people have of the whole Korean culture? Because I know one misconception people have is that it's all that Asian culture in general is monolithic, that it's all like one culture, when we know that there are several aspects. There's Korean, China, Japan, and a varieties that make up Asia. But sometimes people think of all of that kind of region as being monolithic, even though that's very far from the truth.
Well, don't you think it's very similar to like how they think that, a lot of people think all Asians think alike, or all Latinos think alike, or we all it is, again, that's a lack of education. I remember I'm not going to say which one, but I was doing a live show on TV here in the United States. Because I clarified it because I've had shows in Japan as well. And I remember the show said, this Ruby in country Thailand, she was going on, she was really good about it. She's a nice girl, by the way, really nice. And she said, did you guys know that there's a language called Thai? And I thought to myself, is she like joking or what? Because, of course there's a language called Thai, right? Thai people speak Thai language. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, I wasn't belittling her. I thought she was joking. I said, yes. And she said, well, I didn't know that. And, she was probably 45 years old and very well educated. So, you wouldn't think that there's a language called European. I mean, German speaks German, Italian speak Italian, like they all speak different languages, right? There's Dutch. It's all different kind of languages within the European continent. So in Asian countries, you've got the Korean, the Chinese, and the Japanese. They, Filipino. They all speak Vietnamese. They all speak different languages and different cultures. It's not that monolithic, and there are some common bonds. In terms of the I guess emphasis in education and so forth, but I don't like stereotyping any particular group of people, and I've been subjected to that a lot of times. When I first came here, I don't know if you know this, but when I first came here, my parents used to go knock on doors trying to find an apartment for us to live. And in 1971, it's right after the civil rights movement and right after all the anti-war movement, and fair housing laws weren't in place yet. So they would say, "Oh my God, your girls are so pretty and so cute, but I know I'm just a manager here and I can't rent to Orientals." So my dad would say, well, what's an Oriental? Because if you live in Korea, 100% of the people are Korean, right? So he didn't understand English. He's like, well, what's an Oriental? And she would just, this lady turned out to be a nice lady, and she actually rented us the apartment with the condition that we would never be seen. We got the back of the apartment, and we would never be seen in the front. So we'd always go to the apartment. So coming from that background, it's life is not always fair, but I would say that all of those struggles I had faced actually shaped me to be who I am today, which is I just became stronger and better at everything I did because I tried harder. And it is unfortunate. And I think that's bad enough, but physical violence obviously is really bad. So I think, again, like educating, like this lady, the older lady, she was a older American white woman, and she had a lot of compassion, but she felt like she was kind of stuck because her job prevented her from giving us the apartment. So she hid us back there. So later on, she became a pretty good advocate and pretty good friend. And I guess I could have just told her, you're nuts, but it didn't help me in that situation. You know what I mean? So it's a really complex issue, but I am very grateful for the journey. I mean, I do see that when I first came here, things were really bad. There's been a lot of improvement in many ways, and in many ways, it's actually gotten worse. So I think there's a lot more work to do by everybody, for sure.
Yeah, a lot more work to be done in that regard, for sure. There's no doubt about that. One of the things I always try to give my guests the opportunity to do, and like I said, I know you said you could give me about 90 minutes and everything, but I always have my guests give a word of positivity or a word of encouragement. And of course, I always love them to have that opportunity to share their social media and how folks can get in touch with them. And don't worry, I will be inviting you back because I definitely have enjoyed our conversation and would love to continue the conversation as well. But one of the things I always try to get folks to do is share any words of positivity that they would like to give to our global audience, because the International Broadcast Media has listeners around the globe as well as shows around the globe as well. So definitely I'd love to hear any words of positivity and encouragement that you would like to share.
I would like to tell you that believe in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. And I will go as far as saying your view of your self-worth will determine your net worth at some point. So start working on believing in yourself, because God gave us all, and I don't care which God you believe, all the ability to be who we are and to live the life you deserve and the life that you want to live, not the life you think you have to live because you got bills and all these things to pay. So believe in yourself. I am the living proof of, if you believe in yourself, everything can happen, and they will happen if you're willing to work for it. And like just like you and I just talked about, like life isn't perfect. We are faced with a lot of social justice issues. We work on that, but do not let anything interfere with your dream, because your dream will come true. And there are plenty of people like myself and everybody else who have been there just before you, that I'm not going to guarantee promised land because I don't know what your promised land is. But the other thing I love too is you try something, that journey. The journey itself is a beautiful thing. You are going to have, what I can guarantee you is you're going to have obstacles. You're going to have landmines. You're going to have sharp left and right turns you didn't expect, but you will survive it. And when you do, you're going to look back and think how far you came. And I think that that's the beauty of that. And do not let anything, COVID, anybody else, tell you what you can and cannot do, because that's the first thing. That is 90% of your journey, in my opinion.
Definitely. And how can folks reach you if they're interested in reaching you and everything? And what's the best way for folks to reach you on social media and all of that?
Yeah, you can go to victoriawick.com. So Victoria, WIECK.com. And then you can also do Victoria Wick Facebook. I'm under Victoria Wick. And then in Instagram, Victoria Wick Jewelry on Instagram. And you guys just write to me, engage with me, let me know, because if I'm speaking like God's country. If I ever go out there, I just want to inspire everybody because you deserve to be happy. And it's really not that difficult. You can do this with no money, really just grit and determination in this day and age. And well, thank you so much for inviting me over. I just had a great time.
I definitely enjoyed the conversation. Definitely enjoyed talking to you, and look forward to having you come back. Real quickly, since you are a UCLA graduate, are you thinking that your team will be able to beat Gonzaga, as everybody is already writing them off and everything, or do you have that faith that they're going to pull it off? That's a quick non-entrepreneurship question. I don't know if you heard me, Ms. Victoria, but I was asking your feelings about your team as they go into the tournament, because I know they've got a game against Gonzaga
in the
coming up.
running. Proven through, but I Michigan, they everybody said they had no chance. So I like that. I like being underdogs. I have made a living. I had made a profession out of being underestimated, undermined, and being an underdog. So being a woman, being a minority, being poor, all of that kind of. I made a profession out of just proving people wrong. So I hope UCLA pulls through, but even if they don't, I think they will. I really do think they will, because that's my emotions talking. But even if they don't, they're going to be so much better kids by having gone through that. The other thing, Mark, I want to let all of your listeners know: tough losses in your life. These close games, like those kids from Michigan yesterday, they probably learn more about themselves, about their team, about their skill set by losing by 2 points. Those were the losses you think about for your whole life. They shape you. So in some ways, maybe the loser wins.
That's very true. Sometimes it's the losses that you get the most knowledge from, because sometimes it's those losses that cause you to go in and reflect on what you did wrong or how you can improve
Exactly.
to become better the next time around. So definitely, I agree with you that those losses oftentimes are what help
Exactly.
make you a better person. So I appreciate you being on, Victoria Wick, and definitely I look forward to having you back on in the very near future once again. But I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. And I want to invite you to my show. I'm going to contact you on Podit.
All right, sounds
Bye-bye.
good. Bye.
Okay.
So that was Victoria Wick. She was definitely sharing a lot about her background and all the great and amazing things that she has got going on in her life. And I was glad to have that conversation with her, and look forward to having more conversations with her, both on her show as well as on back on these shows that we've got here on the international broadcast media. Of course, we always on the online dinner party have our contest where we try to have people that are watching guess who some of our mystery guests are. We'll have our mystery guests once again, and then I've got a pre-recorded interview that I'll be bringing y'all as well. But definitely, let me give you some of the clues of our mystery guests and see if y'all can attend or figure out who some of these folks are. She attended both Boston University's College of General Studies and the Metropolitan College. She became the first African-American woman to be elected to Congress in Massachusetts. She also was worked as a member of the Boston City Council from the at-large district for nearly a decade. And her mother, Sandra, worked as a community organizer, and her father, Martin, was a professor. So that's a little bit of the clues about this particular person. And like I said, I've got two of them that I'm going to be sharing with you. Her Congress district was previously represented by former President John F. Kennedy. And I understand that she also worked for one of the Kennedys as well. So definitely that's a little bit of the clues about that particular mystery guest. And hopefully y'all can guess that person. And I might bring you some quotes about them as well. And then the second mystery guest, we got two mystery guests, but I'm going to share you some of their clues as well. She was the first woman to win an IndyCar championship event. That's right. She was the first woman to win an IndyCar championship event. Her racing career began with go-karts in her hometown of Beloit, Wisconsin at the age of 10. And at the age of 16, after national success in go-karts, she left high school to race Formula Fords and Volantes in the United Kingdom. So keep that in mind as well. So hopefully folks are watching and y'all can tell me this person as well. She placed second in the 2000 Formula Ford Festival, the best finish ever for an American in that spawning ground for future professionals. In her first appearance at the Indy, she set the fastest lap in practice, 229.88 miles per hour, but she could not duplicate this feat during official qualifying. She also became the first woman to lead the classic race 3 times for a total of 19 laps and eventually finished fourth. She was named Rookie of the Year for 2005. And driving a Dallara Honda for AGR, she skillfully avoided taking a late pit stop in the race and finished 5.86 seconds ahead of former IRL titleist Helio Gustavres of Brazil, winning a major race. She won the pole position for the 2013 Daytona 500, becoming the first woman to start a Sprint Cup race from the pole. She also became the first woman to lead a lap in that race, and she finished in 8th place. That should have been 8th, not whatever I just wrote there and everything. And she co-wrote several books, including the memoir Crossing the Line and Pretty Intense, the 90-day mind, body, and food plan that will absolutely change your life, which she wrote back in 2017. She also later hosted a podcast entitled Pretty Intense. In addition, she occasionally acted, and her credits include the films Charlie's Angels. And she said, I think you have to feel comfortable with your car. You have to go into turn one every lap with confidence. You have to be sure of yourself and your equipment. So that's a little bit about that particular person. And I'm going to give you some more quotes from both of them in a little bit, as well as what I think is a dead giveaway clue. But I'll be bringing those to you in a little bit as well. But definitely we'll be bringing those to you in a few minutes and all of that. But definitely I think that y'all will enjoy trying to figure out who these folks are and why they said the things that they said. So definitely I'll be bringing that up to you in a minute, and hopefully y'all will enjoy this and will come up and give me the correct answers and all of that. But right now, I'm getting ready to bring you, before bringing you those other clues and maybe a picture of our mystery guest and all, I'm going to bring you up a interview that I did. And I think that this time it'll be on the Periscope, but it's an interview that was done with a lady out of London. And we shared a lot about business and entrepreneurship as well. So looking forward to y'all learning a lot about this particular conversation and all that was going on in that regard. So with that being said, we're going to get on over here and check out this particular interview, and hopefully y'all will enjoy this as well as you just enjoyed the one that we just did. So it didn't catch the first time. So let's see if we can get it to catch the second time. Since it didn't want to cooperate the first time, that just means we got to try again. What's that old saying? Try again. Definitely feeling like spring here in Durham, North Carolina. I know that we've been having rain here, and it's already the last couple of days of March. And of course, folks are definitely getting out and about more than they had been doing. I know that when I talked to my friend Zach, he was telling me that he had gone to celebrate his birthday, and he had gone to one of our local bars, or as my guest later on this morning might call them, the pubs and everything, and it noticed more of a crowd and all of that. So definitely more people are getting out and about as more and more people here in North Carolina and throughout the United States are getting those vaccinations. So definitely more people are feeling that spring fever and definitely feeling more of the kind of context of being cooped in for more than a year and all of that. So more and more people are trying to get out, but we do know that the cases still are occurring. I know there have been some cases at Duke University where I'm near, and there have been other cases around as well, even in some of our school systems. So folks are still urging folks to be cautious, wear the mask, definitely do all the things you're supposed to do to protect yourself and all of that. And of course, folks are still paying attention to our political landscape here in the United States as well as abroad and a number of other places also. So that's just some of the things that are going on. And of course, there is a March Madness around North Carolina and around the United States. That means it is NCAA time. And today we will, well, between today and tomorrow, we will have decided the Final Four, and then we'll decide a national champion on next week, a week from today, actually. That's right, it'll be Monday, a week from today, that the national champion will be crowned. But right now they're down to 8, and tonight there'll be 2 more eliminated, so they'll be down to 6, and then on Tuesday we'll be down to the Final Four, and then that'll start on Saturday, and of course the national championship is on Monday, a week from today. So that's some of the things that are going on in our world, and I know a lot of folks are paying attention to things throughout the globe and all of that. So I'm glad to have Jan Carvell with me, and Jan is an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur activist, I would even say, because she does a lot to help other entrepreneurs also. So she tries to get them involved in a number of things that they are doing and all of that. But I'm going to bring Jan in. We're going to have a conversation about a number of things, including both of us going for a haircut appointment later on as well. So definitely that's some of the things that are going on in the world. Jan, I'm glad that I was able to meet you through Potted. I've met a couple of great guests through Potted. That's a great service where you can connect with podcasters. You can also connect with guests for your podcast, or whether it's streaming or whether it's audio. And I have met I've had probably close to almost 6 or 7, pushing near 10 guests that have come from that platform and everything. So I was just wondering, definitely, if you could tell folks a little bit about you. I know that you're an author. You're over there in London, and how are things going over there in London as far as the whole pandemic and people trying to get out and about? I know definitely here in the States, small businesses have been hurt, and I know that's one of the things you do is you try to encourage small businesses. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about the whole small business market and some of the things that you're doing.
Well, Mark, thank you firstly for inviting me on, and to answer one of your questions. The lockdown over here is easing slightly, but at the moment we've got a few weeks to go. We're behind you. It won't be today. I'll have my hair done, I'm afraid. So now I think, for example, hair, we're destined to get haircuts on the 12th of April. So we're just that bit behind you, all being well. But as you say, it's different the world over, and I was speaking to my son earlier, and he's got stuck in Brisbane, which is locked down today. So everything changes all the time. So yeah, it's we all need to be vigilant. I'm with you there entirely. It's not going to go away unless we all do. Vaccines help, but we need everybody on side as well.
Yeah, we definitely got to be vigilant. I know one of the things that a lot of people have been concerned about here, and I've actually got several friends that are small business owners, some that work in the gig economy, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about the gig economy and how that's going there in the UK and things of that nature. But to start off, I'd love to know how the small businesses are surviving, because I've got friends that are in the restaurant business as well as bookstores and a number of other small businesses here in the States. And I know that several of them have faced hardships in their businesses, and in some cases they've even had to close their businesses. But I was wondering, how are small businesses surviving in the UK? I know here there's a lot of different stimulus packages that try to keep the small businesses afloat, but sometimes that's not even enough.
It isn't enough. And firstly, I must have to say a big shout out. There's a lot of businesses fall through the cracks and aren't eligible for one reason or another. I don't know if you've got that in the States, but there's a big tranche of businesses, small businesses over here, and self-employed, and single directors of small companies and things, that are not eligible, have not been eligible for any help whatsoever, which is horrendous. And I know a couple who've managed to keep going, and how they've kept going, I have absolutely no idea. I have so much admiration for them all. And, as you say, hospitality has been walloped, though some of them have managed to pivot to selling things online. But, it's not easy, and all credit to them that they have. Travel, again, I've got a great friend who has a villa business. Really hard to be able to focus over this length of time, to be able to keep going. It's tough all the way.
Yeah, definitely. I can agree with that and everything. You were, I know in your own bio, you had actually have many years of experience in working in a business, and you actually founded a small business yourself, and actually several small businesses, and grew one of them to what the pilot says was a multi-million-pound mark. And unfortunately, I'm horrible at conversions, but I'm guessing that would be like $1 million business in our United States currencies as well. But definitely, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your own business background and some of the businesses that you've helped to grow, because it looks like you started business, and I don't know whether you started at a fairly young age. Like, did you start your first business when you were in high school or college, or whether you started at as a young adult and everything? And were you always like a business entrepreneur? Because I know sometimes people have that entrepreneurship spirit. I've had friends that have done lemonade stands, and of course, I've still got friends that do the hot dog stands now. But I'm just wondering, has entrepreneurship always been in your life? Did you come from a family of entrepreneurs? And if you could share a little bit about your own business journey.
Of course I can. And to answer your question, yes, absolutely. I hated going out and working for other people, really loathed it. So I only did it in extremis. And, while I wasn't starting, as you say, in my late teens, I wasn't starting empires. I was still doing anything to avoid that, going out to work, starting small businesses of doing sales for people. Some catering, not far off a hot dog stand. I sold sandwiches around offices in London for a while, which was, great. I mean, it's something I write and talk about a lot, actually. I mean, it was a tremendously good grounding for business. It's like market stalls. So many successful entrepreneurs start on a market stall. There's, because it teaches you what works and what doesn't. It teaches you that interplay with customers, how to listen to them, how to tune in to what they want. And I think it's a great way to start business. And it's nice that there's so much business, so much money available for huge tech businesses and everything else. But if I had my way, part of the package would be to send them all out and make them work Saturdays on a market stall. I think it's really important part of business learning, that sort of interaction, and I'm very grateful I did the time I did selling sandwiches.
Oh yeah, that selling sandwiches and things like that can be a great experience, and a lot of that. I know sometimes, because we've seen that even here during this whole pandemic, a lot of people, you used the word earlier, have pivoted and they've gone into that gig economy, maybe whether it's here in the States, doing Uber or Lyft or a number of the other kind of companies like that. And of course, there's DoorDash and Grubhub on the food delivery side. And I've got friends that are involved in both of those and everything. So I was wondering, is there a lot of folks that are doing the pivot there as well? And if so, how are they being in terms of their success? And are you seeing a number of them being successful? I've also heard people that have literally just decided to launch their business during this time because they've had more time at home. So they've had more time to think about what kind of business they would like to launch and do more planning. But I'm imagining the same is also the case in the UK. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
There's both, as you rightly say. I mean, there's great pivots. I was saying to somebody this morning that, for example, in the next door village to me, there's the traditional London taxi black cab driver that you may be familiar with the London black cabs, and of course they've been getting no work whatsoever and through it, and he's converted several black cabs to pizza ovens, which he takes around and delivers pizzas, and he's doing really, really well. He's got a huge celebrity following because his pizzas are so good, so I mean, there's all sorts of weird and wonderful things going on. And in fact, my friend who's running a villa agency, she's found a lot of that's a villa rental normally, but she's found a lot of her owners are fed up, and so she's starting to deal in real estate. Because they're fed up of owning villas, which of course got closed down, and they're anxious to sell. So she's seen a gap in the market and is running a second string there. There are wonderful pivots going on. There's no doubt about it. And yeah, you're right. The people are starting up, and it's always been traditional. I mean, every single big hit of recession we've had, there have been a huge birth of industries and companies starting up. I started my first one on the back of one of the recessions. I can't even remember which one now, but 90s, early 90s. But they are great breeding grounds because they make people rethink what they can do. As you say, they've got a little bit more time. They may be starting a side hustle to help themselves out because they're scared, or they may be starting something serious because they need a whole new future, and they're determined to get themselves out of where the horrible times have led them, and that's a huge incentive. So I think on the bright side, we will see a whole lot of fantastic companies emerging, in 21, 22 that will help.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Everything. Now I know one of the things that's happened here. Like I said, I've definitely mentioned the gig economies and things of that nature. But a lot of people have also just thinking about the nature of work in general. Because a lot of people got tired of going into the office, feeling kind of confined in that office setting. And of course, more and more people started working from home because
Yeah.
of the pandemic and things of that nature. And now there's even talk with the schools and with the work environment that we've pretty much moved into a new era, and that new era being kind of that hybrid area where you'll be working both from your um, office or whatever that corporate environment is, where you get a lot more of that social interaction, but then you'll also be spending part of that time working from home as well. Because I think that more and more, even corporations are thinking that this is a way for them to both save money and maybe even create more productivity. But I was just wondering some of your thoughts about that and whether you think that that's something that definitely was a trend during the pandemic, and the pandemic is still going on, but whether you think that this is a trend that will be continuing. I know that I'm involved in the arts, and there's even talk about, because a number of like even our festivals, our music festivals, and definitely our film festivals have gone hybrid. So they've been kind of like doing education. So they might have started off virtually, and now they're looking into their future as
Yeah.
being a mix of both live, in person, and the online content as well. Now, most of them right now are still in the online version, but they are being in virtual stuff. But they are looking at eventually going hybrid, and definitely education has gone hybrid already. So I was wondering, do you think that that's going to be the trend in
I think
enterprise and in entrepreneurship?
Sure. I think it was always going to be. I think it's one of those things that the pandemic has accelerated. I think there was already a movement and a change of work, what with automation, and tech that was going to happen at some time, or was going to happen very slowly. But the pandemic's massively accelerated, and companies who weren't very techy, who had never considered it, all of a sudden overnight, completely unprepared, were forced to operate from home working, which was a real tough one. And I think that's opened up a whole new economy for culture specialists, because it's very, possibly the hardest thing is to get culture right. It's a real shift, which is not necessarily a bad thing in my view, but from micromanaging, because the micromanager in an office, was never a good thing anyway. But the best they can do with home workers is go CC me, CC me, CC me, and that's just been quickly blown out of the water. It doesn't work, nor does making people log in at set hours and judging them by the hours they work. We're shifting towards, assessing people on what work they deliver, which is a far, far better way of doing it. So I think that's important, but for Generation Z particularly, the shift to home working has been really tough socially. I mean, it's been tough for all of us socially. I'm not denying that, and I'm antisocial. So for some people, it's been horrendous. But I think for the young people, it's been really, really hard. And so I think then the part of that rebuilding culture is also about rebuilding social interaction, whether it's hybrid or remote or whatever. People need that feeling of being part of something.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Another thing that's happened here in the States during the pandemic, and it was actually happening even before the pandemic, was a lot of social activism and things along that line. Of course, there is definitely, I know there in the Europe and everything, there was the Brexit movement. Here we had Black Lives Matter and a number of other movements as well. But that was causing corporations to look at their kind of social justice aspect and also kind of their aspect of diversity. And of course, with some of the attacks on Asian Americans and some of the attacks here on Latin Americans and everything, we've had that conversation as well. So I'm just wondering, are y'all having that conversation, that hard conversation around diversity in the UK and around Europe? And are you seeing that kind of conversation? Because I know that a lot of corporations here have made it a point to try to show their diversity, try to show that they are being fair to all aspects of society, not just in terms of race, but also in terms of gender, in terms of orientation, and in terms of another of other dividing factors.
I think corporations themselves are, because I think they are aware that that's the way the world is going. I think, unfortunately, we don't have a particularly diverse, friendly government in the UK at the moment, without putting too fine a point on it. But I think the corporations, thank goodness, are fighting for it and moving that way. And I've always been a believer in it, always fought for it since I was young. I just happened to read a lot of American literature when I was small, and it impressed on me the need for diversity from a very young age, which was just chance, really, but it became deeply ingrained in me. But it's going to take a long while for people really to change, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah, it does take sometimes people to have to go through things and go through change and things of
Yeah.
that nature. And I know that even here we heard a lot of conversation around that from your country's perspective, with kind of some of the things that were going on with one of the princesses and things of that nature, that being the Madame Markle and everything. But I was just wondering your thoughts on that, and then I definitely wanted to learn more about your thoughts
You was
about the
going to
book and
land me in
everything.
it here. Um, oh gosh. Let me think about an answer to that one for a second. I think any relationship actually is very hard to tell from the outsider's point of view. I think both sides will have a viewpoint, because in any relationship, two sides have different viewpoints to what's
Right.
gone on. I'm glad that the royal family is addressing diversity, to bring them up to date. They're not always the most up to date family, by necessity, because to create the sort of role of mystique and monarchy that they do, they are set apart from the rest of us, rightly or wrongly. But it does mean that they're likely to be less familiar with, sort of more modern issues. It's a difficult one. I think there's arguments on both sides, which I go not sure about that.
That makes a lot of sense and everything. One of the other things I was curious about was if you could tell us about the book and everything, because definitely the book is out now. It was out in February, and I know that it's very much important in your work as well, which is the whole
It
idea
is.
of scaling for business. And I do know that even some of our big corporations are trying to figure out a way to either scale down or to try to figure out ways to get into that scale kind of sense. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about the book and why you think that it's important for us to talk about scale at this particular time.
I think it's very important. I mean, the type of scaling I talk about in the book is your first stage of, going from sort of perhaps 1 million turnover to 10 million turnover, and that's still ish translated into dollars. So we're not talking going vast scale. We're talking about that change between a tiny little home-owned business, if you like, that is great, and I'm a huge fan of them, actually, because I've owned plenty myself, and I'm a passionate believer in them. So I'm not in any way speaking them down, and may I say that loud and clear, because they're wonderful. But equally, some businesses have to grow further. And in that leap of growth between the sort of 1 and 10, give or take, and it also depends on sector, You change between being a single owner or a small group who are just everybody knows everything and very involved into creating a separate entity as a business. And it's a very, very different change, you know. But I think if you achieve that change between that particular growth, there's nothing much to stop you scaling much bigger. But it's that first change from the home business, the lifestyle business, or the baby business, into a separate entity that is really, really hard to do. And so many businesses don't succeed in doing it. You know, and I struggled. I mean, I got up a little bit into that gap, but not the whole way. And I just assumed it was me, you know, but I wasn't good enough to do it, as we all do. But the more I got talking to people, the more I discovered that actually it's really common that very, very few people, a very low percentage, manage to do it. And so you know, the next thing, intrigued by that, I thought, you know, I want to know why. What's stopping people? So I did a lot of research and I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs all around the globe. And hence the book is some of hopefully the answers to help other people get across that gap if that's what they want to do.
Now, that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of times people are not sure of what they want to do or how they want to do it as well. What are some of the things that just in your own entrepreneurship journey surprised you about being an entrepreneur, or some of the things that you wish you had known when you went into it that you now do know? Like I said, a lot of times
Oh my
when we go
goodness.
into entrepreneurship, there are a number of things that we're sitting there going like, I really wish I had known this or that about business. But what are some of the things that have surprised you about being an entrepreneur that you wish you had known in your early entrepreneurship journeys?
I think, I mean, for one thing, I wish I knew how important, how different that stage becomes, because I think one of the biggest stumbling blocks actually to that growth is that many people, myself included, you know, drift happily onwards and upwards, and we start selling more and we start growing and we think this is wonderful. I just do more of the same. And everything's going well. And of course, you don't do more of the same. That's not how it works in scaling. And nobody explains that to you. You know, you think you know, if I've got £1 million worth of sales, you know, then if I get, you know, go on, I'll get 2 million and everything will be, you know, similar. But it isn't, you know, because there comes a time when you have to step back. You could still, you know, if you've been putting in 60 hours, you can't suddenly put in 120 or whatever. So you can mean other management and all sorts of things. Excuse me. You know, so the whole ball game changes. I wish I'd known that, because I'd have had a much better shot at growing and a much clearer idea if I'd wanted to grow actually as well. Because it really opens your eyes as to what's involved. I wish I'd thought exit before in the early stages, because I think, again, you're creating a bit, you know, this being of a business. You know, what are you going to do with it? If you take on other people, you know, even if it's one or two, you've got this mass responsibility towards them. You know, and so how are you going to cope with that long term? You know, you're going to just let them down and walk out one day and close up shop, or are you going to sell it? In which case, how are you going to do that? You know, you are creating something that you may not be able to just walk away from sort of completely free. So I think people ought to be much more aware of that from an early stage. You know, it's different if you just set up as self-employed, obviously, but creating business.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. I know one of the things that our founders here on the International Broadcast Media talk about, and it's more when they're talking about it, they're thinking about here in the States, but I would argue that it's probably throughout the country, but I'd love to hear, and throughout the world, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. But they oftentimes talk about here in the States that in our education system, we're using 18th century values in the 21st century, and we're not teaching enough about entrepreneurship, enough about business, and enough about just kind of like the basic things that you need to know to run a business, whether that's kind of like how to do accounting, because one of our founders is actually comes out of that world, and everything, and definitely some of the other things that you need to know in terms of financial well-being, just to run a household, much less run a business and all of that. And I would argue in the same kind of context that too often we're training our kids to go to work for a corporation, to go like from college right into the corporate America. And not always, I mean, there is some push and definitely encouragement of some entrepreneurship, but I don't know that there's enough of a push, and that we're definitely urging people, to go to work the 9 to 5, maybe not do the same 9 to 5, because that's something that's changed in society. Whereas before, our grandparents, and definitely, I would even argue probably our parents and our great grandparents for sure, would be in one job all the time. They might start that job and stay in that job for the duration of their life and everything. But now there's more shifting around and people going from one job to another. I know even my own dad has probably had, and he's in his now early 80s, but he's probably had about 6 or 7 different jobs if I was to sit there and count them and everything, starting when he was a young man in his 20s. But definitely, I was just wondering your thoughts about the education system and also the push toward getting more and more people into corporate America and not necessarily thinking about entrepreneurship. I know those are two separate questions, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
No, I'm happy to talk on both of them. I mean, I got involved in campaigning for entrepreneurship. I mean, what you say is absolutely manna to my ears, because I got involved in this sort of thing a long time ago, a couple of decades ago, and or maybe 15 years ago, and because I really believed it was so important that people had that option. And back then it was a bit before most of the sort of popular shows on the TV. We've got Shark Tank and The Apprentice and all of them. So, people are at least familiar with the word entrepreneur now, which back in those days, I mean, people just didn't know it and at all. But they still didn't think it was an option that was open to them. As you rightly say, they were offered a job in their local bank or the local shop or whatever, and that was their job for life. So, firstly, I was part of a UK campaign to support and encourage entrepreneurship for a while for the government, and talked a lot in schools and universities to, as part of their curriculum, to open it up. And at that point, the government was very promoting it. And sadly, I have to say, I happened to move areas, which has got nothing to do with anything apart from the fact that I therefore got hold of my local enterprise hub only a couple of years ago, just pre-pandemic, and said, hi, yeah, I'm here. I've been involved in all these enterprise campaigns all my life. And they said, oh, well, it's not really fashionable in schools anymore. So, we don't do it much. We're much more interested in getting people back into the local banks. So we seem to have gone full cycle. We've gone backwards at a moment where, don't get me started on it. So it makes me so cross, because at the moment where corporate jobs are much less safe than they used to be, where we need entrepreneurship to create other jobs much more than we ever did. And, as I say, over here, at least, the viewpoint in education seems to be away from it. And you are so right. They are not equipping them with the basic skills needed. There's far less of the obvious skills, like you mentioned about accounting and that sort of thing, but also just critical thinking. The kids are coming out with very little ability to, in the old days, we were taught to, we had to come up with our own viewpoints and work things out. It's all spoon fed nowadays, and they've no idea how to work out a viewpoint or sort of problem. Critical thinking is just out of education, and that's as far as I'm concerned. Not good.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you. One of the other things I was curious about from your standpoint, because I know that you definitely use LinkedIn and Twitter and all of that, and that's the whole concept of social media, because we do know that social media has been very important, and a lot of times our entrepreneurs find that it's very much a necessary tool. I know that I was just in a meeting yesterday with one of our folks with the one of our journalist associations, and all of that, locally based. And we were going to be doing a workshop with our students, and we're talking about their needs, like whether they needed, of course, they need a resume, but we're also saying that they do need probably a website, but also definitely need a LinkedIn profile and all of that just when they're going into the job market. So I just wondering your thoughts about the importance of some of these social media sites like LinkedIn and maybe even Twitter and Instagram, but the importance of those in the job searching market, because I know sometimes people get too caught up in it and they don't necessarily use it for the professional ways that it can be used.
Very true. And I mean, I think it depends enormously on the market, sector that they're looking at going into. There's some jobs that the first things companies will do is go and look at that person's social media and see how, I mean, if, for example, if they're going after a job in marketing, the first thing somebody will do is go and look at what they're doing on their own social media sites.
Right.
But also, I think that there is this, and I think LinkedIn is increasingly important for a professional. But I think young people need to be very aware of the fact that, once it's out there on social media, so what they say now, or, after a drunken night out with their mates, but might seem screamingly funny, is not going to be screamingly funny if somebody snapshotted it and it comes back to haunt you when you're trying for a job in 10 years' time. It is also a force for your ill if you're careless with it. Better to keep things private within reason.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, what are some of the things that just your own journey surprised you? Like I said, I mentioned definitely you mentioned some of them, but I would love to know just in your own personal journey, what are some of the things that you wish that folks knew when they were going into entrepreneurship that they don't know? Like, I'm sure that there are a number of things as you talk to your clients, you can't believe that they don't know this or that about entrepreneurship. And there are probably some that are more common than others, but whether it's sales kind of entrepreneurship or whether it's some of the other type of entrepreneurship, what are some of the things that shock you that people don't know about the entrepreneurship world?
I think people get held back by fear, and I think there's no need for that because there are all sorts of reasons that people do very well or don't do very well, and it doesn't make you a bad person, whichever way you happen to end up. I think they get held back through fear that they're not good enough or that they don't know enough. And I've met some amazing entrepreneurs who concentrate on their own self-development and take themselves to a place that they would never have got to if they'd just settled for whatever was expected for them in the local job market. And equally, I've met entrepreneurs who haven't concentrated on self-development and haven't done very well as a result. Self-development and entrepreneurship are very much hand in hand, in my opinion. So if I think entrepreneurship's a lot about living life to the full. If you do it right and you really enjoy it and you do something you care about, and that part of that is developing yourself and living the best life you can.
Yeah, I can understand that. One of the things here in the States, of course, everybody points to Elon Musk and Bill Gates. And of course, you mentioned Shark Tank. So all of those people that are involved with that show and a number of other kind of great entrepreneurs and everything. But I was just wondering, who were some of the entrepreneurs that influenced you to go into entrepreneurship and influenced you personally, whether they are people that we may not know here in the States that are from the UK or that are people from definitely the global community. So it might be the UK, it might be other parts of the globe like Australia and like some of the African continents, as well as here in the United States, or it might have even been personal family members. So I was just wondering who are some of the folks that were kind of your encouragements to go into this lovely field of entrepreneurship.
Truly, when I first went into it, I mean, I didn't know what the word. I don't think I'd heard the word entrepreneur. It was being self-employed, as far as I was concerned, or starting a small business. Entrepreneur. Probably I learned the word about 10 years in or something. Crazy. And I guess probably the first book over here one read about entrepreneurship was one of Richard Branson's. He was probably the UK's lead on entrepreneurship, in fairness. But as you say, there are a lot of people since, and it's difficult. I get so sideways inspired. I mean, I tend to quote Pat Lencioni. I'm not sure which way he pronounces it. The American writer about company culture. I think he did some groundbreaking work, and I used his stuff very heavily. There's a English guy also called Nigel Risner, who I was addicted to for quite a while. Again on culture, but I mean, it's just entrepreneurs and you must get this from your interviews. They are just such inspiring people, all of them.
Right.
Everyone I interview now, I come off buzzing and thinking, wow, this is just such an amazing experience to talk to this person.
Yeah, you definitely get that experience. One of the other things that I've been noticing as well, I'd love to know your thoughts about that, being from the UK, is more and more of a push for us to be truly a global community. I mean, definitely there was a time that a lot of entrepreneurs would be kind of doing the buy local kind of thing, or definitely creating the entrepreneurship in their local environments. And I'm definitely a supporter here locally of our buy local movements and supporting our local entrepreneurs. But I'm also a big fan of us being a truly global community. With the internet, you can definitely communicate with people around the world. And I know that there are even whole markets, even in whole continents, because I know that there's been a real big push to more and more people to get involved in Africa and parts of Asia and things of that nature. But I would love to know your thoughts about this global marketplace that we're part of, as well as your thoughts about, because I know that even in the UK, there are a lot of buy local kind of movements where you're supposed to support your local business owners, but at the same time try to be as much of a global business presence as well. So sometimes it almost sounds like it's a contradiction, but I think that the two can work together. But I was just wondering your thoughts about that.
Too. No, I'm absolutely with you. I think they work together. There's I think they offer different things. I think we've got, for example, a global talent market now, particularly with all the tech businesses. And if we're dealing remotely with remote workforces, you can be an English business, but employing talent that suits you from Australia. So, I mean, it's opened up the talent market, which has always been one of the things that have held businesses back, is getting the right people in the most mammoth way, providing people don't find that too scary and don't get held back by the idea that they couldn't possibly have, a PA in, or a, global software engineer or whatever. If they think outside the box and thinks it doesn't matter, and concentrate on developing remote culture, then they literally can, have base their business across the world with cross the world people, which adds to diversity, it adds to knowledge, and it adds to your business strength. I think buying local is also, as you say, hugely important, and that comes back to the experience thing. And also the, sort of bit like point of people needing human contact, which you don't get from a global business as much, however hard you try with culture. The sheer pleasure of, using your local coffee shop and blowing on your cappuccino, or, actually browsing a bookshop. When are we going to be allowed to touch books again? It's just, the whole character, it's something that touches us in a very different way. And I don't think your bland local shops without any emotive enjoyment will particularly do well. But I think there'll always be a place for, I hope there'll always be a place for buy local that are genuinely experiences in their own local ways.
No, I definitely agree with you on that. One of the other things that I was doing, producing, not a show that I host, but of a friend's show, and then he had a lady on from Mexico City, actually, and she was actually coming at us on his show, which actually airs on one of his own networks that he's created and everything. But he was talking to her about various things about culture and a number of other things. But one thing that I noticed during the interview was that she was coming to us from a coffee shop, but the coffee shop was actually also, because we heard the sound of bowling balls and everything, it was also apparently a bowling alley or
Yeah.
something along those lines. So I was just wondering, are you seeing more and more of this, where there are more and more kind of businesses that are dual purpose? So like I said, you talked about the coffee shop, but maybe it's a coffee shop / arcade, or a coffee shop / bowling alley. And like I said, it could have been two separate businesses, but I just know as I was watching the people, it looked like it was one common business. But I just wondering your thoughts about that, and whether that's something else that we're going to see more of, which is these kind of joint business ventures.
I think I think that's quite possible. I think generally people have got to be competitive to survive, and that means offering as many different things without diversifying to the point of losing identity as possible. So if they can stand out from the crowd that they also offer X, Y, or Z by having, collaboration with somebody else in the building next door or whatever, great, fantastic. It's a different version of pivoting in a way, isn't it? It's so, well, good on them.
Yeah, definitely a different way of pivoting. And like I said, more and more people are pivoting. Now, you've done podcasts as well. I was just wondering, and you mentioned that you've had the pleasure of interviewing a number of entrepreneurs. I imagine most of them being there in the UK, but some of them global as well. But I was just wondering if you could share some of the stories that definitely touched you the most, and a little bit about what their entrepreneurship journey was like when you were interviewing them. Because I know that you've also done a number of these kind of interviews, and like you said, you've definitely had the pleasure of talking to a number of folks. But I just wanted to know some personal stories that resonated with you.
Oh gosh, I mean, I still do it. I do it. Unlike you, I don't put it out on the web. I write about it all, but I interviewed 30 of them for the book alone, and each one of them was so extraordinary. There were, I'm trying to think, there was sort of probably 7 or 8 from the States, 6 or 7 from Australia, and the rest from UK. And everyone had just an amazing story to tell. It's so difficult to narrow down. It's one question people ask me a lot about the book. Who was your favorite? And you can't, because people are just too different. It's like saying, which cheese do you like best? If you love cheese, you find them all fascinating. But I probably take terrible offence by being compared to cheeses, but there we are. But you know what I mean. It's very, very difficult. I mean, I think I'm a sucker for people overcoming adversity. I mean, I spoke in the book. I spoke to Dame Shelley Hunt from the States, who and her stories of growing up on the Boston streets. As a child, they lived sort of what she calls under the house, because it was the concrete basement. And her first experience with entrepreneurship was her mum building, because she didn't have anywhere to wash Dame Shelley when she was a baby. So she got a bag of some concrete and some bricks, and literally made a sort of almost a bird bath, and that was her bath as a child. In this freezing cold under the house of Boston, and that's how she grew up. And now what she's achieved is just staggering. She's advised presidents, and I mean, how heartwarming, what courage, what how much you admire somebody like that. But it also gives you faith of what can be achieved if you put your mind to it. And so many stories. I could talk to you all day and tell you each of them. They're just incredible people. People who've had different business experiences. Again, if we're sticking with sort of the American contributors. I've got a guy who teaches at Stanford, David Meerman Scott, who's a global marketing specialist, but learned a lot of it in Japan. So he's fascinated by Japan and brings back some techniques from there. It's just incredible.
It sounds like some amazing stories that you've learned and everything. This is actually wrapping up the part of Women's History Month and everything along that line and everything. But we do know that there's also been here in the States, and I imagine throughout the world, pay equity issues with women entrepreneurs and women in business. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about one, being a woman entrepreneur and the celebration of women in life in general with Women's History Month, but also kind of those pay equities. And we've even seen the equities I mentioned earlier today before bringing you on about the NCAA tournament, and even some of our lady basketball players were talking about the inequities in the facilities based on what they had versus what the men basketball players had as well. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about pay equity and the need for pay equity, and both here as well as I imagine throughout the world. But I'd just love to hear some of your thoughts about that as well as women entrepreneurship.
I'm horrified by some stories that I hear of what's happened to people. I guess I grew up on a farm, and for health reasons was a fairly isolated child. And the people the kids I tended to play with, which were nearby, tended to be little boys. So I tended to grow up quite a tomboy, and I guess I never gave it a lot of thought. Initially, I just thought, if I want to do something, I'll do it. Why should it matter that I'm a woman? And I just thought like that, So it certainly didn't stop me business wise. And later on, I went into manufacturing, and I set up shop in a very industrial town, very unionized town, very rough. Sort of the sort of town that has stabbings at night. And I still really didn't clue into it. I just thought, well, okay, this is great. I'm running, these, there's people that work for me, and goodness, there's a lot of men, but it doesn't make any difference, does it? But of course, I very quickly realized that I had to deal with a lot of violence aimed at me. Because there weren't much constraints in that, back in then, this is sort of 15 years ago, and it wouldn't have done any good anyway, going to police. So you had to get used to the fact that you'd have sort of some heavyweight tool or a piece of furniture flung at your head or whatever, which was, quite interesting as a woman. And you knew that you couldn't, there wasn't any point in fighting back because you weren't as strong as them, and it would just ask for a lot of trouble and you'd come off considerably worse. So you just had to stand your ground and not be frightened, which when I was younger I could do. I couldn't do it now. But I was sufficiently be-minded, I think, to think, no, I'm not having this. Don't you damn well throw things at me. But looking back at it, it was a bit risky. But yeah, I saw a lot of discrimination, and actually the talk on the shop floor was very much, women are a pain in the backside, basically, because that was the culture. And I very much doubt that's changed in that sort of setup, to be honest. However much we talk about diversity.
And actually, you brought up something else that I'd be curious to hear your thoughts about. But there was a time here in the States that the unions were very big. I've actually got some friends locally to work with some of our local unions and all of that. But I was just wondering, what do you think the role is of the unions in the business community? And is it still as important as it used to be? I know that in the UK, it seems that unions are still very strong, and there are definitely pockets of businesses that the unions are still very strong here in the United States. But I'm just wondering your thoughts about the role of unions and whether they're still relevant in the 21st century.
I think they should be relevant. I think they're a good thing, but unfortunately they do attract a few individuals. You're drawing me on all sorts of really combative issues here, but I think unfortunately I certainly personally came across at least one example of somebody who was hoisting their own far left and their own personal ambition as well, in my opinion. But not for the greater good. They were, they talked of having got rid of another business in the town, for example, to prove their point. And somebody I knew said, but that meant a lot of people lost their jobs. It didn't matter. We won. Was the answer. And when unions get to that pitch, or somebody in a union gets to that pitch that they think that winning at any cost, including the jobs of the people involved, is winning. I think that's unionism gone mad, and it can happen. But that said, you know, I've also known moderates in unions who do an extremely good job and, you know, are a very necessary force.
Yeah,
And no, I don't think they're around very much now.
yeah. Yeah, they don't seem to be around as much and everything. I know
No.
that even in the study of history and everything, I've definitely remember that during the industrial age, Europe and definitely England and a number of other places played an important role in the creation of the industrial age. And we do seem to be in a new age now. And I think we've been in it for probably several decades and everything, which I guess we would call kind of that high tech age and all of that. If we were going to give it a name, I don't know if anybody has named this era yet, but definitely the 21st century seems to be very much about high tech and things along that line. I was just wondering, do you think that Europe has played as much of a role as it did historically? Because I know that definitely we go back into like the 17th century and the 18th century and some of the early centuries, England and a lot of the other European countries played a very significant role in the development of that. I was just wondering, do you feel that England and definitely Europe is playing as much of a role as they did in some of the earlier switches of society? Because definitely we've gone through several switches of society, and like I said, a lot of people always talk about the industrial age, but there's a number of other ones that we've gone through as well. But I was just wondering, do you feel that your part of the world has played enough of a role in that development, or would you like to see y'all play more of a role and not be as much? We definitely know the United States and definitely Japan have played a role, but I was just wondering, would you like to see more of the European nations playing a role as well?
Lob me another grenade. Yeah, what can I say to this? I mean, obviously, you know, Britain at one time, you know, going back 100 years, was an empire. You know, we are, in my opinion, a pretty insignificant little island these days. Europe is in a stage of transition rather right now. Whether it can come back from it and reform stronger, I think it would be a very good idea if it did. You know, but whether it will, I think it's too early to tell. It would be my assessment of that. And where Britain lies in it outside the Union, I'm really not entirely sure.
Gotcha. Definitely. I was just curious because, like I said, I know that even locally, one of the companies I worked for is a testing company, Measurement Incorporated, and I know that that's one of the things that we studied in the past was the role of Europe, and particularly the role of Europe during that industrial age. And along those lines, definitely when people are moving away from kind of some of those weaving jobs and other kind of jobs into other aspects of a change in the way society was. And that's what made me think of that particular question and everything, because I know that's something that we oftentimes will discuss within our educational, and I think even in our school educational system, it's oftentimes discussed as well, because that was part of the test. And so therefore I'm thinking that since it was part of the test, it's probably part of our academic system as well. So definitely that's where that question came from. But I was just also wondering if if folks are interested in learning more about the book, where can they find the book at? And what are some of the social media sites that they can find your work at and things along that line? Because definitely folks have been listening for a while and they may have ideas that are like, this Jan woman is very interesting and has all kinds of interesting opinions and great thoughts. And I definitely would like to get a copy of her book, Scale for Success. So how can they get a copy of the book and learn more about this whole concept of scales and marketing and all of that? And I would also love to hear, in addition to your given where they can reach you and everything, your definition of marketing, because like I said, that's always is also oftentimes fascinating me, because I've always heard people saying that they're into marketing, but then sometimes it's multi-level marketing. Sometimes it's different kinds of marketing. So I'm always fascinated by what people mean by marketing when they say marketing.
To me, marketing is connecting what you offer to the right people in the world who are likely to have a use for it. How would that do?
Yeah, that makes sense. And how can folks reach you if they wanted to reach you in terms of like the book and how is the book sold? And if so, well, I know the book is sold, but where is it sold in the United
Sure.
States and in other parts of the globe? Because I know that it's available on Bloomsbury, and I'm thinking Bloomsbury is a London-based company, but I'd love to know
It's
more
also
about how
based
they can get it.
Bloomsbury is based in America, but the hard copies are for pre-order in America. At the moment still. They will be coming to America, but they can be pre-ordered now. It's obviously available straight away on Kindle. Where you can get it from Bloomsbury Direct, you can get it from Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and any good bookstore should be able to source it for you. And you can contact me through my website, which is jancavell.co.uk. And I have various social links. Excuse me, my voice is going. All of which are Jan Cavell in some form or another. There's not many of me, so you should find me jancavell.co.uk pretty easily.
Cool. Well, I'm not going to hold you much longer. I do hear the voice, and I definitely know, like I said, we both got our too, but I'm glad that I was able to get you for this hour and everything. One of the things I always ask all my guests before they leave is any words of encouragement. Media is a global network and all of that. Streaming podcasting network, and of course we've got shows from South Africa, from Nigeria, from a number of other parts of the globe, and of course we also have guests from around the world, as well as even contributors from around the world as well, because I know one of our main contributors is a gentleman out of Australia. But definitely any kind of words of encouragement that you would like to share with our global community, just about life in general, about what we're going through, and just words of positivity that you would like to share, because I'm all about positivity and trying to encourage people within that positive thought. So definitely any words of encouragement, words of positivity that you would like to share.
I think the most important thing of all is be kind. You know, be kind to each other. Let's help each other through this. And we can get through it. You know, people have been through horrendous things in the past. It's about
Any that we haven't touched on, this is your chance to do that. And then other than that, I'll give to wrap everything up. I definitely always love to give my guests a chance to comment on anything that they would like to comment on that they haven't had a chance to reflect on or to comment from my probing questions.
I don't think so. I mean, again, just on a positive note, I'd say, you know, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you know, believe it, you can be. You really can.
Definitely, and I agree with that as well. I think too often, you mentioned it earlier, we get too caught up in fear and things of that nature, because I know that fear can be definitely a negative aspect. And I also sometimes think that we, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this now that I think about it, are caught up in too much self-defeating, because we self-defeat ourselves. Because I know that I've even been guilty of that as well, where we sit there and we stop ourselves from going forward. I've known that I've even had job opportunities where I was already telling myself that I didn't have a chance at the job before even applying for the job, and would stop, and then next thing you know, things would stop and all of that.
Absolutely right, Mark. We are our own worst enemy entirely. And, you know, the older I get, the more I see how stupid it is when you do it, you know, because we only get one crack at this life. And if we let fear stop ourselves, you know, the only person we're hurting is us. So don't give anything a go.
Yep, definitely. I definitely agree with you on that and everything along those lines. I want to thank you for joining us and for definitely being on the show and everything, and look forward to having you come back. And like I said, I was glad you were able to do this whole pre-interview and everything because we get ready to go to our both barbershop appointments. Since mine is about 2.5 hours, and I don't know when yours is, but definitely it's time for me to head off and get into a more relaxed kind of environment and all of that. But I
You
did want to
enjoy,
thank you
Mark.
for coming on and joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me on.
No problem. Thank you.
Take care.
Well, that was a great conversation with Miss Jan Carvell. Like I said, we talked about entrepreneurship and her new book that she's got as well. So definitely looking forward to having more great conversations later on this afternoon with the radio show with Mark Lee, of course, and that'll be on at 2:00 after I get done with the barber appointment. So y'all should see a whole new look. And y'all may be like, wait a minute. Which way is that? Now he got the gruff look. Now he doesn't have the gruff look, since I'll probably put part of this in the interview as well. So definitely want to thank you for joining me, Ms. Carvell, and look forward to having more great conversations with you as well as other great and amazing guests as well. So I know we're going to have a whole discussion on later on about at the 4:00 show around disabilities and all of that. So looking forward to that. And on that note, I'm getting ready to get on out of here and get ready to take care of that appointment that I've got. And then, of course, I'll be back later on this afternoon with more exciting guests. Well, as y'all can see, definitely had that hair appointment a couple of days ago, and definitely continuing to go around and do some great conversations, and still got a few more minutes here. So I'm going to share a little bit about things going on in our society as well as just general conversations, but we still got to get those mystery guests as well. So this, one of the two mystery guests said, quote, "I'm a Black woman in politics and everything I do is political." She also said that going public with her alopecia and her efforts to come to terms with it might be personally beneficial. And she said, "I want to be freed from the secret and the shame that the secret carries with it." So definitely that's some of the things that this person said as well. And she also said, "And because I'm not there just to occupy space, I'm here to create it," she added, "and I want to be free. I'm making peace with having alopecia. I have not arrived there. I am very early in my alopecia journey, but I'm making progress every day, and that's why I'm doing this today. It's about self-agency. It's about power. It's about acceptance. Right now on this journey, when I feel the most," and this was actually one of her longer quotes, "when I feel the most myself is when I am wearing a wig. So that means I'm on my way." So that person means that they're on their way when they want to hear that. But on the opposite side, that other person said, "No one wants to hear my perspective on politics, but I think honestly, as you get older, you get more interested in it." So that's what the other person said, the other mystery guest. So like I said, we got two mystery guests. One's political, the other maybe not as political. And then this other person said, "No matter how good you are, how brave you are, and anything, it comes down to that car so many times. Not every time, but so many times." And then they also said, "Sometimes it takes looking at the past to really be able to move forward and to learn from it." And they also said, "I take none of that to heart. I don't feel like there's anything that I need to do for anybody else. I want to win bad enough for myself anyway, that nothing anybody can say makes me want to win anymore." So definitely, they are definitely all about trying to get that winning and all of that. They say, "I know what it takes to be fast, and I feel like every year I learn valuable lessons about how to be better the next time." And they also had something to say about competitiveness. They said, and I quote, let's see what they said about competitiveness. "I think you can be happy and still be competitive. A good lesson for everybody is to think a bit before you speak and represent who you really are instead of the brash, emotional you." And they also added, "One of the areas I have a little less confidence in is giving any kind of speech." They don't have that much confidence in terms of giving a speech and everything. And they also said, "It would be hypocritical of me to being female in some ways and just being female in other ways. It's part of the program." So that's what that particular person said that's maybe involved in the world of sports. They also said, or this other person did, the political one said, "We must acknowledge that issues like systematic racism, economic inequality, I should say, and the achievement gap are the result of man-made politics. At some point or another, everyone has felt unseen and unheard and marginalized. Yep, definitely could agree with that. We should be uncomfortable with the growing gaps in our society, and we cannot allow ourselves to become desensitized to these injustices. They also said, I happen to be Black and a woman and unapologetically proud to be both, but that is not the totality of my identity. And they also added, my life as an advocate for those most in need is inspired by my mother's example. She believed in the potential inherent in each of us, and that belief is the foundation of my work. And she also added, I don't think people that make history set out to make it. And last, they said, for me, whatever vantage point that I'm serving, I'm going to be an advocate and do the work to actualize my values. So I'm getting ready to give y'all the 2 giveaway clues, but I'm going to wait for a second because I'm going to bring in some information about some of our amazing folks that are doing amazing things around the network, and some associated with the network. They might be doing it on their own pages and things of that nature. So definitely I'm going to bring in some of those. Then I'll come back with what I think are giveaway clues totally. And then I'll bring up the pictures if nobody tells me or guesses the people that I am thinking about and all of that. But don't forget that on Thursday, we've got the Coco Show. So let's see what the Coco Show is all about.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coco McMillan Show. You may have seen her in Morocco, New York City, Los Angeles, California, Detroit, Philadelphia, Chicago, Las Vegas, Nevada. One of the background singers for Mickey Howard and the late, great Gerald Levert. Ladies and gentlemen, your host, the beautiful, the wonderful, the spectacular, Miss Coco McMillan.
At 6 o'clock is when you can catch the Coco McMillan Show. Don't forget that that's Thursdays at 6 o'clock. You can catch that show at that particular time. And of course, that's on Facebook and on some other outlets as well. But always some great conversations going on in that regards as well. So definitely that's one of the places that you can catch that truly amazing show. I'm gonna let you check out another powerful person that sometimes does her things on what's yesterday? Yesterday was Tuesday, on Tuesday afternoons. So let's see what Barbara is all about.
Hi, I'm Barbara H. Smith, known as the Masterful Presenter. If you could figure out a universal language, personality code that connects with potential client, how powerful would that be? I empower people to communicate better what they do, what they have, and what they bring to the table. People love to buy. I don't need you to sell it to me. I come in there with an intention, and that's what you're going to do going forward. You're going to go into networking events with intention.
I am here benefiting from the wisdom of Barbara Smith.
She gave so much information on how I can just excel in my business, and I'm taking it to a whole nother level.
I'm learning a lot that I didn't really know about my business.
The information that she's been presenting has been informative and helpful to me.
If you have not been in the presence of Miss Holmes Smith, you need to make sure you do so. Her workshops are authentic. She comes with such training, and she just graces you with her presence, and she allows you to feel the experience like none other before.
Yep, that was a little bit about Barbara H. Smith. And like I said, she's doing some truly amazing things on Tuesdays. And I'm always fascinated by some of the guests that she's had. She's already had Holly, who was a makeup artist. And then yesterday she had somebody that was involved in the fitness world and all of that. And then she's also had somebody that was involved in a number of other fields as well. So definitely, oh, that's right. She had the lady that's doing the children's book. That's right, rolling around Chandler and a couple of other things as well, but doing all kinds of things like interior design, as well as definitely working with Chandler, which is her son's book or the book that focuses on her son, that being Miss Shelton. So Miss Shelton was sharing a lot about that on yesterday. So that was a truly great conversation and everything. But there's also amazing conversation that happened here, like our show Talking Upstream.
My name's Brandon. I'm a world traveler, foodie, and YouTuber. Together, you and I will find the best travel hacks, tips, and best places to explore. Join me as we find new adventures together, live only on IBM.TV.
All right, folks, it's about time for me to bring up those final two clues that I think should be the giveaways. But one of them is I am a member of the squad. So this particular person is a member of the squad. We know that this is a political group that exists, mostly of folks that are young activists, young political activists. Some people would consider them very progressive and all of that, but that's definitely one of the people I'm looking for is a member of the squad. And the other person, I know y'all have got to know this one, is I am probably most known for my role as a GoDaddy sponsor, or GoDaddy spokesperson, I should say, is actually the better term, a GoDaddy spokesperson. So definitely that's the better way of phrasing that and everything. So definitely I'm thinking that most of y'all should be able to tell me who that is and all of that. So waiting for the folks to give me that definitive answer, since I know that y'all are on top of that and have no clue that y'all know the answers to that whatsoever. You should be able to do that with no problem whatsoever. I'm going to reveal the pictures as well as the winners in just a matter of a minute or two. By the way, don't forget that here in North Carolina, we just have some history made with Cooper nominating a Native American woman to lead a cabinet agency, the first in North Carolina history. So just weeks after President Joe Biden nominated the first ever Native American woman to lead a cabinet department in the federal government, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper has done the same. So Cooper announced earlier today that he has picked Pamela Brewington Cashwell to be the next head of the Department of Administration, which oversees logistics, contracts, and much of the other behind-the-scenes work of making state government run. Cashwell currently works at the Department of Public Safety, where he has the titles of Senior Policy Advisor and Chief Deputy Secretary for Professional Standards, Policy, and Planning. She has also held positions at the State Ethics Commission and the U.S. Department of Justice, including in the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. Pam Cashwell's wealth of experience has prepared her to lead the agency the state government relies on for many critical support functions, Cooper said. Her goal-oriented approach will help assure efficient state government operations, as well as advocacy and equity programs that benefit all North Carolinians. So, of course, she still got to go through the Senate hearings and all of that. By the way, Cashwell is a member, is Lumbee and Coharie, and went to UNC Chapel Hill for both undergraduate and law school, the governor's office said in a press release. The Lumbee tribe has for decades been fighting with the federal government for formal recognition, but North Carolina has long recognized them as a tribe. If recognized by the federal government, they would become the largest official tribe east of the Mississippi. The Coaheri are a smaller tribe and likewise have been recognized by the state, but not federal government. The Lumbee tribe is largely centered around Robeson County, while the Coaheri are centered around nearby Sampson and Harnett County. While Cashwell is the first female Native American to be named the Cabinet Secretary of North Carolina, David McCoy was the first Native American overall. So definitely Jim and Hunt made McCoy a member of the Turtle Mountain Band of the Chippewa Indians, the head of the North Carolina Department of Transportation back in 1999. He continued on in Democratic politics as former Governor Mike Easley's budget director from 2001 to 2008, and then he was the state controller, the government's chief financial officer, until 2014. There are around 168,000 Native Americans living in North Carolina, just under 2% of the state's population, according to the census data. At the federal level, Biden, who is a Democrat like Cooper, nominated New Mexico Deb Haaland to lead the Department of the Interior. Haaland is from the Laguna Pueblo tribe, NPR has reported, and was a member of Congress before joining the Biden administration. So glad to see that we are seeing some diversity grounds being made in society and all of that. Still have a lot of other work that needs to be done in the field of diversity on a lot of different levels, but at least we're seeing some of that being done. And by the way, it looks like Colin Firth may be coming back to North Carolina to do another role, but this time he might be playing Michael Peterson. So it says Colin Firth playing Michael Peterson. They're asking it as a question mark. HBO announces cast change for the Staircase drama. So I do know that Colin Firth has done some work here in the Carolinas. I forget the name of the movie he was in, but there was a movie that he was in here not that long ago. But a new project bringing the story of the Michael Peterson murder case to screen in dramatic form now has a new actor in the lead role. According to Academy Award-winning British actor Colin Firth will now play Peterson in the limited series adaptation of The Staircase, a role originally said to be played by Harrison Ford. The series will be based primarily on the Netflix documentary series The Staircase, but will draw on other books and reports. The Staircase tells the story of Michael Peterson's murder trial and the death of his wife, Kathleen, who was found in a pool of blood at the bottom of the back staircase in the couple's Durham home in December of 2001. Peterson was found guilty in 2003, but granted a new trial after FBI misconduct was revealed. He took an Alford plea in 2017 and was released. He has been living in Durham since then, and in 2019, independently published 2 books, Behind the Staircase and Beyond the Staircase, which chronicles his life since Kathleen's death, including his time in prison. The series is being written and produced by Antonio Camus and Maggie Cohn and will premiere on HBO Max, a Warner Brothers streaming service. Campos will also direct 6 of the 8 episodes. When asked about the casting change, Peterson, from his home in Durham, told the News and Observer via email, "We're still holding out for Brad Pitt, but I'm immensely flattered that Colin Firth is taking on the role of me. He is a better fit since Harrison Ford is older than I am and would be playing a man 20 years younger during the trial, while Colin is exactly the age I was when this tragedy began." So definitely looks like this could be an interesting movie, and we'll see how this all plays out and what goes on in that regards. I'm gonna have to reach out to Michael and see if he wants to come on our show as well, because we love having conversations with all kinds of interesting individuals. And I do remember him from doing the days of my working at the Arts Council and a number of other places as well. So always good to talk to people and get their story of their life and all of that. And we've had some truly amazing guests, and that would be another truly amazing guest. So I might have to reach out and see about folks' thoughts about that, and if that's something that folks are interested in having happen or not have happen and all of that. But we're just going to check into it and see what society brings us in that regards, and see if that is something that's going to take place or not take place or not. But like I said, I'm about to reveal our mystery guests, and I think that one of them, you should have automatically had an idea who it was. I said a GoDaddy person. So that can be none other than Donica Patrick. That's right. Donica Patrick is one of our mystery guests. Donica Patrick is one of our mystery guests and all of that. So that is one of our 2 mystery guests, is none other than Donica Patrick And definitely, I think that folks would be able to figure that out based on what I said about the GoDaddy connections and all of that. But sometimes folks may not have been paying attention, or maybe they haven't been watching the GoDaddy commercials lately as well. But definitely, that's who I had in mind, was Donica Patrick as our mystery guest, and definitely was hoping that folks would catch on to that particular mystery guest. But sometimes folks catch it, sometimes they don't. So in this particular case, I didn't get in catch on to that particular mystery guest, but that doesn't matter. We'll try to give them another shot, but we'll have some more mystery guests in April. That's right. The first show in April will be coming your way on April the 5th, and looking forward to have some more great shows and some more amazing interviews, already talking to people and trying to line up who these guests will be for that particular time as well. But if you're wondering about the second mystery guest, well, that would be none other than Ayanna Presley. Ayanna Presley, that with the signature twist, and then lately she's been dealing with her alopecia. So this is another picture as well. So these are our mystery guests, none other than Ayanna Presley as well as Donica Patrick. So those are our mystery guests for this particular time around and all of that. So had some great mystery guests, been trying to bring out mystery guests, and y'all have not been following the rules and actually catch it on with these amazing mystery guests that we've been sharing with you and all of that. Baseball's around the corner, and of course we got basketball already going on, but I think I'm going to bring up a little bit of a picture of some baseball and then get ready to get out of here very shortly and see what else I've got on the course for the rest of my day and all of that. So it's almost time to get on out of here and to check out some other things, and of course start lining up guests for the weekend, because I don't know whether we're going to do a rerun or what for the Gamers Den, but I do know that definitely Jatovia was having a break, so if we do it, it's going to be a without the main star. But we'll see what transpires in that regards, or whether we'll just come back on a week or two later. But we'll just play it by ear and see what goes on in that regard. I did see my friend Tasha earlier today, or Sasha, I should say, and he was talking about politics and all of that, but he's a real master at chess. So let's check out his chess show commercial as well. Yep. Well, that's about ready to wrap everything up and everything. But I'm getting ready to actually do a quick disappearing act, but come back and I show y'all a picture. That's right. That was a picture of Duke Gardens, and I understand that they're about to open on a limited basis in the very near future. So keep that in mind. They're about to open in the very near future and all of that. And that was a picture of the Carolina Theater. And on May 26th, they're going to have a big celebration that will include music, it'll include auction, and a number of other things. And that'll be taking place on May 26th. So we're talking about just a little bit less than 2 months from now will be that amazing event, and yours truly is involved with that also. So looking forward to that amazing event coming our way very shortly. So definitely keep that in mind. And like I said, I'm here to get on out of here. As you can see, there goes Donica Patrick. So let's see if I can find that picture. I don't know why that one was there. Hold on. There we go. That was Donica Patrick. And like I said, that was one of our mystery guests and all of that. But I'm going to get on out of here, wrap this particular edition of this show up. And of course, we'll be back doing things on international broadcast media throughout the week. But don't forget that we've got Funk Music with Zach on Sunday. And of course, we've got on his own 9 on the Grind station, Funk from the Front Seat coming our way on Saturday. And I'm looking forward to some great conversations as always on both of those shows that the amazing Zach Robertson does as well. So definitely looking forward to that and looking forward to some other things going on as well. But right now, let's check out just a little bit of what is going on in the springtime, because springtime is also baseball time.